Sounds like somebody's knocking on somebody's door.
We are live on YouTube.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight's meeting. It is February 25th, and this is a special City Council meeting of the City of Crescent City, as well as the first meeting for our Measure S Oversight Committee. And let's call this meeting to order, and please call the roll, clerk.
Councilmember Inscore.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
And Mayor Greeno.
I'm here.
Also, Committee Member Cruz.
Here.
Committee Member Keim.
Here.
Committee Member Matz.
Here.
Committee Member Perry.
Here.
And Committee Member Shalom.
Here.
All right, excellent. At this time, let's pledge allegiance to our flag. Councilmember Instor, could you please lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. Ready and begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
of
United,
the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which
it
it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
liberty and
justice.
justice for all.
Thank you.
All righty. At this time, we're going to open up public comment. Any member of the audience is invited to address the City Council on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the City of Crescent City. Comments of public interest or on matters appearing on the agenda are accepted. Note, however, that the council is not able to undertake extended discussion or accept any or act on any non-agendized items. Such items can be referred to staff as appropriate, which may include placement on a future agenda. All comments shall be directed towards the entire council. Any comments that are not at the microphone are out of order and will not be part of the public record. After receiving recognition from the mayor, please state your name and city or county residency for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and an additional allotment of 3 minutes will be given for each agendized item. And as you can see on the screen, our public comment email is publiccomment@crescentcity.org. Or if you'd like to call us and do public comment, our phone number is 253-215-8782. And our webinar ID is 885-8645-7556. Do we have any public comment at this time?
No public comment from our Zoom audience, Mayor.
And no emails.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to reports and presentations then. We're going to review the Measure S Oversight Committee bylaws.
All right, thank you, Mayor Greeno, members of the council, members of the Measure S Committee. It is a pleasure to be here tonight with you all. This was quite the endeavor to get here, and it took quite the amount of community effort and most importantly, community support. So it is definitely an exciting night for us as a city. To first start out, I want to kind of just review everything. So I'd like our city attorney to kind of run through the bylaws, which were just recently adopted by the city council. So with that, Ms. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. Welcome, City Council and members of the Oversight Committee. So we drafted the bylaws and adopted them at a recent meeting with the intent of providing one document where the Measure S Oversight Committee members could go to sort of look for guidance on procedures and the rules that they're operating under. So I'll hit sort of some of the highlights of the bylaws, and you can please read them in full at your leisure. The purpose of the committee is to review and advise the city council on matters relating to revenues and expenditures that are derived from the 1% sales tax that was approved by the voters on November 3rd. That sales tax is going to begin implementation on April 1st. So we haven't seen that yet, but as of April 1st, 1 extra percent should be added to all sales within the city limits. In order to do that, the committee has been given 2 tasks that are outlined in the bylaws. One is to report to the city council and the public on each fiscal year's Measure S revenues received and expenditures made. So the basis for that is basically, this is how much money was received, this is where the money went. And an additional task is to make recommendations annually to the city council on the allocation of Measure S revenues for the upcoming fiscal year. So that's the point we're at now. While we haven't received revenues yet, we are planning on receiving them and budgeting for them in the next fiscal year. And through a series of workshops, you'll be hearing information about where possible places and plans to be spending that money. And the city council and city staff will be receiving your input on that. The ordinance calls for 2-year terms. However, to avoid having complete turnover every 2 years, we provided in the bylaws that this first year we will stagger the committee and we will choose 2 of the committee members to serve a 1-year term. And that will be by law, it's just by chance. And then after that, everybody will serve a 2-year term. We have not placed any limits on the number of terms that you may serve. As you know, it's hard to get volunteers to do these types of services. So probably not very wise to place limits. So if you do end up only serving 1 year and you want to come back, I encourage you to put your application again next year. Because the committee members will be making recommendations on the expenditure of public funds, you are subject to conflict of interest rules. You will need to file your statement of economic interest. That's the Form 700. I know Robin has reached out to you about doing that. And you'll also be required to take the free 2-hour AB 1234 ethics training course. We have planned for the committee to just have 2 officers, a chairperson and a vice chairperson. The purpose of that is for the chairperson will run the meetings and the vice chairperson will serve in their place should the chairperson be absent. And those officers will be chosen by the committee members amongst themselves. All meetings will be conducted in accordance with the Brown Act. So that means we are posting agendas. They will be accessible to the public. The public will be allowed to comment and be involved in the process. We're not allowed to extensively discuss or take action on items that are not on the agenda. We must have a quorum to conduct a meeting of the committee, and that's 3 members. Let's see what else is important. That's about it. Oh, the last important thing is, so committee members are not to make official representations before other public bodies other than the city council unless they are asked to do so by the city council. You're of course free to do so in your own capacity, but just not as a representative of the Measure S committee. And happy to answer any questions that come along now or later regarding your role, the bylaws and rules, et cetera, that apply.
I had a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
You had said that the quorum would be 3, and so is that 3 for the oversight committee itself, or are the 2 city representatives included in the committee?
That's 3 of the 5 voting members.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any more questions on the bylaws at this time from either the city council or from the Measure S committee? Awesome. At this time, well, since there's no action, do we have to do public comment, Mr. Weir?
I would recommend doing public comment on each agendized item.
Oh.
I don't,
All right, well, let's open up public comment then.
See any hands raised in our Zoom audience?
And I did not receive any emails.
Okay. With that, we will move on to our second item on our agenda, which is the Measure S Oversight Committee term length.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Greeno. For this, as Ms. Rice has earlier stated, these are 2-year terms typically, but we do want them staggered so we don't have a complete renewal of a committee at any one time. So there will be 2 members of the committee who will be chosen to just serve 1 year. And so that first term will expire December 31st of 2021. So December 31st of this year. And so there's the bylaws basically state that it needs to be done by lot, so by chance. What we have set up now, and this needs to be agreed upon by the committee, is that we have all of your names in a bowl that Ms. Sunny Bolero has prepared previously. And the thought is that she could just draw the first 2 names out. But we do want to make sure that you agree as a committee as to that process. We can get maybe some thumbs up if everybody's good with that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, excellent. 5.
Only if Sunny draws the names.
Okay, well, let me know when you're ready. So I have them individually here so we can all watch them in the clear container here. So Cindy Cruz, Heidi Keim, Emery Matz, Ernie Perry, and Kelly Schlong. Okay, first name, Heidi Keim. Second name, Ernie Perry.
Okay. Thank you, Sunny.
You're
Just to
welcome.
reiterate, as our city attorney said, you are all free to reapply as many times as you want.
Okay, at this time, I guess at this time we are going to take public comment on that. Or do we have any discussion from the Measure S Oversight Committee? Okay, seeing no discussion, any public comment on this item?
Do not see any hands raised.
Okay. With that being said, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is the selection of the chair and the vice chair.
Thank you. Ms. Patch, do you want to give them just a brief report on that selection?
I'd be happy to. So the way that you guys will be doing your motion, you'll make a motion on who you're going to select. And traditionally, the chair is selected first, with the vice chair being selected second. The Rosenberg Rules of Order state that there can be up to 3 motions on the floor at the same time. When there are 2 or 3 motions on the floor after motions and seconds at the same time, a vote shall proceed first on the last motion that is made. After discussion and debate, a vote would be taken on the third or the second motion. After that passes, no vote will be taken on the first or second. So you go last, and then whichever one passes with unanimous is the one that wins.
All right, thank you, Ms. Patch. So really at this time, we'd be looking for for nominations or a motion to be chair. So we'll take chair first.
And this is supposed to be done, I believe, by the Oversight Committee itself. The City Council is supposed to stay out of this.
I'll nominate Kelly Schlong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heidi.
I'll second it.
Thanks,
I'll
Andy.
You're welcome.
Looks like we have a motion and a second. Ms. Patch, do you want to poll the committee?
Committee Member Cruz,
Yes.
Committee Member Keim,
Yes.
Committee Member Matz,
Yes.
Committee Member Perry,
Yes.
and Committee Member Shalom.
Sure, I guess. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
All right, Chair Schlong, this is now your committee. Do you want to run the selection of the vice chair?
Gosh, my skills are a little rusty here in running a meeting. So I guess we will take a recommendation or nomination for a vice chair at this time. Heidi, would you be interested?
Sure.
Okay,
I second it.
there's a motion and a second to have Heidi Keim as the vice chair. Can I get Robin, could you pull the vote?
Certainly. Committee Member Cruz,
Yes.
Committee Member Keim,
Yes.
Committee Member Matz,
Yes.
Committee Member Perry,
Yes.
and Chair Shalom.
Yes. Thank you. Okay,
Should there have been public comment between those votes before the vote? Just curious.
Ms. Rice, do we want to take public comment now? Just
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, let's go ahead and take public comment now.
Okay, let's take public comment on this item, please.
no public comment on Zoom.
All right. Okay, thank you, Robin. At this time, I'd just like to thank you all for getting involved. Before we go on to the next item, I was really excited to see that we had 8 applicants for these positions. Usually it's very difficult to get people involved, and I was really excited to see that every single person on that applied could have been on this committee. Every single person was competent, and I could have selected any one of them, but you guys made the cut, and I thank you so much for being here. The people of Crescent City are relying on you to help keep our feet to the fire with these funds, and I really appreciate you guys stepping up and being involved in this way. At this time, we'll move on to our 4th item on our agenda. It's the discussion and recommended enhancements to the Crescent City Police Department utilizing Measure S funding.
All right, thank you, Mayor Greeno, members of the council, Chair Salong, members of the committee. So yes, exciting times to say the least. Ones that anyone who's paid attention to the city or been involved in the city over the course of time knows how much these funds and just the vast needs that we have as a city, as a community, to put these funds in place. So just to reiterate, the kind of the overall process for tonight is we're going to be going through the police department in depth, and we're going to look at the needs that the police department has and some of the different solutions that are out there to try to meet those needs. But the police department's not the only thing that we're going to be discussing in an overall sense with Measure X. It's going to be the focus tonight, but on March 9th, we're going to be talking about streets. There'll be a meeting after that discusses the fire department as well as the pool. And so we have those 4 basic components that Measure S money could be used, but it is a general fund allocation. So if there are other recommendations that the committee might have, then those would be valid as well. So that's kind of the thought, is we'd walk through each of these different workshops. There might be some things that will that the committee feels strongly about that you can make a recommendation now, or that takes early action that we can take now. But then we'll come back after receiving all of the information, and at that point in time, that's when we'd be looking for the committee to actually put together their recommendation for the city council. This process is really built to take place now and into the spring, so that when we hit our budget workshop meeting in May, the council has that Measure S committee's recommendation, and that's when the council will decide exactly what goes in the budget for this next year. Once it's in the budget, then it's going to be staff's job to implement it. So then we implement it throughout the year. Once those funds are spent, that's when the committee will come back together again, review the expenditures and the audited expenditures, so it's validated, saying that yes, those funds were spent where they were supposed to go, and then we start the process all over again. It's kind of the theory. So any questions from committee in regard to just overall process on that?
What's the estimated revenue each year?
1.3 million. Okay, so seeing none, I will dive into a quick presentation, and we're going to run through. Well, I'll dive into it now, and then and we'll run through it. All right, does everybody see my screen? Okay, so this first presentation, once I get it going, was the same presentation that was shown as the city embarked on this tax measure. And this is like I say, this is a good thing. And this is a thing that will let us meet the needs that we've had for some time. So it's creating sustainability and resiliency for critical public safety needs. We're talking fire department, we're talking police department, we're talking local streets and roads, and the pool. So we have the Crescent City 10-year master plan. That's for the fire department. They run over 2,000 calls a year. They don't have the staff to have that be sustainable anymore. Their call volume has gone up dramatically. So they have over, like I say, over 2,000 calls this year. What was decided in the master plan was additional officers, 3 additional captains. That doesn't come without resources, without money, as the song is saying. The total for that is $662,000 to the fire department to implement that. City isn't alone in that endeavor with the fire department. And we'll have a whole workshop on the fire department, but the city and the district share those costs. The city portion of that is about $307,000. We have the police department. Police department was all about staffing, and we're going to dive into the police department a lot. This was the current sort of police department staffing. City council addressed some of it by creating sergeant positions to give us supervision. The overall staffing plan, though, said we needed 2 more officers and a detective, and we will touch on that in depth tonight. We have the Fred Inert Pool, critical to our community. As you see in this slide here, second leading cause of unintentional injury-related death for children 0 to 14. This was part of the pool master plan. Unfortunately, the pool also runs at an extreme deficit. Right now, the city is the only funder of that. So we have $400,000 deficit the last couple of years. We have our streets. Anyone that has driven around town or experienced the before and after of the Front Street project knows that the streets need a whole lot of money to go into them, and a whole lot of improvements. And so there's a vast array of projects that could be dictated to streets. So potholes, overlays, reconstruction, sidewalks, streetscape, all of that. All of those things kind of going into this idea of defining that Crescent City experience and really what it is. And each of those attributes that we talked about really does that. From police department, fire department, those are services that we experience as residents, as customers, as visitors. You have our swimming pool, and then the streets that we all drive on. So that's really what was presented to the community. So these are the challenges that we're facing: the increased emergency calls, the health and economic concerns resulting in our pool closing, the no additional funding for streets, COVID-19 and budget deficit. We looked at cutting expenses, which we have done as a city, and what's making us so we have a budget that is in a much better shape than what we originally thought going into this year. And then there's the increasing revenues. And that's really what the fire department master plan said you need to do in order to fund a sustainable fire department. That's what's really led to this ballot measure. Was a key driver in it anyway. So, Ernie, to answer your question, it's a 1 cent general fund sales tax, resulting in approximately $1.3 million annually. You know, it could go up, could go down. It is sales tax, so it is one of those things that does have a variable to it. I will say what we've experienced with COVID is we thought we were going to have about a 10% decrease in sales tax, and Linda Lever, our finance director here, can speak to it as well. But we really haven't seen that, and so we think that we're going to come in really close to this, even in the time of COVID. This is what was told to the voters, and as part of some of our informational pamphlets that were handed out, and it's maintaining the 911 services, the street maintenance, the fire and police, purchasing of life-saving equipment, and sustaining operations of a pool, and emergency preparedness. Critical pieces of this measure: local money stays local. So 1 cent tax, every dollar of it that's spent in the city or charged in the city comes back to the city and makes up that 1.3 million. It goes to these critical services and the actual users of the service. So if you're a visitor in town, you're going to purchase something, you pay sales tax on it. You could also have a medical emergency, you know, at that same time. You're going to be using those fire services or police services or whatnot. And so it kind of goes to the user that is using the service. And then groceries, prescription meds are exempt from it. Strict financial accountability. That's where really the Citizens Oversight Committee, which you folks now sit, that is what you are here for. It's this other piece to help the council, you know, make the recommendations, and then also make sure when the money is spent that it's going where the council wanted it to go. For perspective, this sales tax, Crescent City currently today is at 7.5. As in April, when this starts, we're going to go to 8.5. So if you look comparison to Humboldt County cities, 8.5 still does not put us outside of this range. In 2022, Measure F, which supports the fair, it's a 1/4 cent tax. My understanding is that it will not be renewed. That'll put us down at 8 1/4, below, still below these other cities. So just some information as to how we compare to other cities. Okay, ballot results. Let's see how this works. This is on another screen, so we'll test the Zoom. All right. So this is just some information on the Measure S. Council saw this, I think, last meeting or the meeting before. So Measure S ended up almost passing by 2/3, just shy of 65%. In order to do that, and I'll just kind of go through a couple of key slides here. You have to have a diverse approval. So it's not just any one party that approved this. You know, you can see kind of the split between the Democrats and Republicans, and the fact that the percentage of their ballots and others, right? It's almost an even split between the three, and yet Measure S received 65%. You don't get that by just appealing to one group. This was approved by members of all groups. You look at by age, it's the same type of deal here. Percentage of ballots by age. So here's your age group. Again, kind of an even split, a little bit more weighted towards the 65 plus, but nonetheless, you don't get 65% without appealing to all of these age groups. And so Measure S really is one of those measures that our community wanted. And now it's our job to make sure we're spending their funds correctly. So, like we talked about, there are the 4 key elements. It's a general fund sales tax, so it can go to any general fund aspect, but it was definitely directed towards police, fire, streets, and the pool. Now, here's where some of the more discussion items can come in, and this is in regard to where do we start? How do we want to go about our methodology for taking this 1.3 million and trying to make sure it addresses the needs of our community? From my thought, and this is certainly something we can discuss as well, but at least it's a starting point, is we have 4 areas. If you take 1.3 million, you divide it by 4, you get 325,000 per year per area of need. So at least a start. And then as we start to look at these things, we'll look at the priorities of each and we can kind of shift a little bit, but that would kind of give you a basis point anyway. The other thing that we're going to be talking about are their ongoing costs, which is like personnel. So if you hire somebody, that's going to occur every year. Or if you have like a lease program or something like that with an equipment or debt service that you have to make debt payments on every year, that's ongoing. Or you could have one-time costs, which are equipment, just like a one-time purchase, or facility improvements. So those are two key aspects that we'll be talking about, especially as we get into our discussion tonight in regard to the police department. Okay, so this is where I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen. And I think it's really important that you guys, that really everyone meets the department, meets our new chief, right? Understands what exactly we're talking about when we're talking about the Crescent City Police Department. So it's my honor to turn it over to Chief Richard Griffin. Rich has been with us, been with the city for a couple of years now, but been our chief for a year and a half. Rich has done a remarkable job of building off of the past, taking the strides that were done before him by previous chiefs and really taking it to a new level. His integrity, the way he runs the department, the morale is the best that I have seen. And so hats off to him as our new chief. So with that, Rich, do you want to introduce the council to your department and the committee?
Thank you very much, Mr. Weir. And hello, City Council, Mayor, and members of the committee. Yeah, Chief Richard Griffin. I've been here for 2 years now total with the department. Like you said, very proud of what we're doing and where we're going. So I'll like to introduce you to the rest of the crew and kind of give you a little brief synopsis. Hopefully I don't miss a lot of things. I will share my screen here. Is everybody seeing Lieutenant Kai and Christina? So Christina is, for lack of better terms, the workhorse of the department. She is her title is records clerk. She's, I guess, mom of the department. She does everything, but she does all the filings, answers the phone all day, does reports, requests, and handles evidence room. She really does about 3 or 4 jobs in one. And I wish I had 40 more hours a week from her, because this department would not run without her. She does an excellent job. She's a very valued member of our department. Lieutenant Kai is our canine, our current canine. We've had 5 total, I believe. And that he's definitely one of the most treasured members we have, for sure. He is an apprehension dog, as well as a certified narcotics dog as well. So does tracking also. This is not in order by any means, by rank or date or anything. Here we have Officer Lowe. In this picture, you can see that he was selected this past year as one of the hometown heroes in the inaugural event. I can't remember overall how many were selected, but I want to say around 10 or so. Officer Lowe he's been with the department coming up on 10 years in about a couple weeks. He went to high school here. He's been here for a large portion of his life. He's our current school resource officer, has been for several years, and he does an excellent job in that. Here's Sergeant Lopez. This is a picture of him and Kai at one of the high school games here locally. Sergeant Lopez has been the canine handler here for several years. Before he was promoted, he was a canine handler. He's done an excellent job in that. We're looking forward to hopefully expanding that program also back to the 2 dogs that we had. Going back to him, he is also our range master for the department. Handles that training as far as firearms, everything involved, certified rifle instructor, handguns, you name it on that end. This is Officer Valero. She came to us just a year ago, coming up, I want to say it was, next month, a year ago. So this is her the day she got off FTO. She came to us from San Diego, and she wanted to come put down some roots in a community like ours and hopefully grow her family here. Officer Miller, that's him with his 5-year plaque here. He's a patrol officer working midnight or graveyard shifts right now. Really good value member of our department, getting into a lot of the search warrant aspect, detective work, stuff like that. I believe Officer Miller also, he's been here for a long time, well over a decade total. I think it was for family-wise. This is Officer Pearson and baby Jojo. She was our Christmas elf during one of our promotions for the city. Not this past year, but year before, we did a Christmas ornament decoration contest. So Baby Joe came in to help people out and get them encouraged. Officer Pearson's coming up on 4 years with the department. He left for a little bit and did some work with the sheriff's office here locally, and then decided to come back. He's our use of force defensive tactics instructor and also a firearms instructor for the department. In this picture on your left, Sergeant Justin Gill, total, I believe he's working on 14 years or so of law enforcement experience. He had actually chief experience prior to me. He was the Blue Lake Rancheria chief of police, and he decided to come back basically home for him with his family, and he's a very valued member of the department also. He's our training coordinator, does a lot of the admin stuff that I'm asking him to do, and just implementing that vision for the future. Officer Sanders, he was hired about the same time as Officer Valero. He comes to us with prior experience with the sheriff's office locally, and he's also prior Coast Guard working with that. He is also one of the things, several of our officers are bilingual. He's, I guess, trilingual. He does Russian, Ukrainian, and English. Officer Valero is, of course, bilingual Spanish, and Officer Lowe translates a lot Hmong for us too. A little bit of the crew here, kind of hard to get a picture of Sergeant Owen. She doesn't like it very much, so I snagged one of them, but Sergeant Owen's pictured here. She's been with the department, she'll be 14 years in June. So she's our senior sergeant, senior person on patrol, also a lot of experience there. Officer Tyler Balch is pictured on the left of the picture. He's coming up on 4 years here, went to high school here in the community, and he's also looking to lay down his roots, possibly starting a family. Hopefully we're talking him into that. There's Officer Cooper in the middle. Officer Cooper is looking at 4 years experience also. He's recently had a baby, baby Zelda, with his partner, and he's looking at the same, staying here long-term as well. Then you have Officer Miller and Sergeant Lopez there. And don't forget about Lieutenant Kai at the bottom. Come up here, also another person's kind of elusive to get a picture. This is our past 4th of July this year. Celebrating his 80th birthday in the middle, but next to him, the tall person there that kind of looks like Sam Elliott when he's not wearing the mask, that's Sergeant Wilson. Sergeant Wilson has the most experience out of anybody in the department, prior experience with the Los Angeles Police Department. I believe he's just about 30 years total in law enforcement experience. And that just rounds out the crew. So that was a good community event there. That's as far as the officers there. Mr. Weir, do you want me to go into the pictures of the department now?
Yes, I think that would be a good segue. So, you know, that's the department, like I say, and like Rich was talking about there, you have a lot of people that are vested in this department. The officers want to be here. They want to stay here. And you can't ask for any more than that from my position, city's council position. The city invests a lot in their officers. When they choose to stay, when they feel empowered and they feel part of the department and they stay and they start to gather those years of experience, that just comes back tenfold to the city. So hats off to Rich and the team that he's building. So yeah,
if I can add just a little bit on that, the biggest thing that occurred over the past year and a half, we didn't lose anybody we didn't expect to. We had 2 people that basically retired. One moved back home to Colorado. The other one got out of law enforcement, went to Idaho. That was expected and coming. We haven't lost any other officers for any other reasons. Officer retention is my main goal. Officer wellness right behind it or with it. With that, you have the sunk cost initially for training in those first couple of years by far. And once you get past that, you start getting the dividends paid back to the city on more experienced officers who are going to reduce your liability and give you better casework. And going across the street, the district attorney, you know, it just tenfold. I mean, isn't enough to say once you get to that 5-year mark, let alone if we can retain them for 10 or 15, the benefit it gets to the city. So that's the type of environment we're trying to promote here. And it is here in Crescent City by far. So that's definitely, if we start getting to the point of recruiting, that's one of the big tools we're going to hit home with. So I want to make sure you guys knew that.
So we're going to be talking about additional staffing. That's our current staffing as he went through it. One of the other areas is facility improvements. So with that, Rich, do you want to take them quick little walk through the PD? At least
yeah, no problem. I took a couple pictures today of the current status of the police department. Again, it's not in a specific order, but if you have questions about it too, I can explain. Just stop me during the middle of it. So this current picture is our women's locker room, currently shared between 2 officers, and then Christina, of course, in there. picture off to the, not in the picture off to the right is a full bath or a bathroom there. That's their general facilities. There's no showers in there. There's no showers at the police department total. This back here is where we currently use our body camera footage. That's where it's downloaded and maintained in that computer. One of the projects that we talked about later would be adding on a wall here and enclosing this, potentially making that a detective office. Just wanted to put that in there for a little perspective of what we might want to do with that room or that area available. This is one of our records rooms, kind of for all the cases work that we're going through. We've been doing an audit both of our records and our evidence room since I took over. We're just going through old cases that we can purge by our own policy and by city code. This is the view when you come in the back door. That's the first thing the officers see, other than if you take a right and go to the men's locker room. That's the status of the floors and the walls that you look at. As you can see, the floor is pretty well worn and in there, so kind of speaks for itself. This shows a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new. These are the old locker rooms or the old lockers that we use for evidence storage or evidence when you book it in, kind of pre-evidence. So the officers would bag and tag it and they place it here and Christine would come get it. And then you go back in here and there's our evidence room. What we're able to do within our budget this past year is actually get new lockers, which expanded our availability to the officers. And it also added a little bit of security because these are keyed lockers. Once they put them in there, the keys go in a little drop box over here. So something we've been able to do. This is the current men's locker room. As you're looking into it just from the door. So these lockers are the 12-inch lockers. Not too deep per se. It's kind of hard to keep a lot of equipment in there, to be honest. That's what they're looking at. Some officers end up using 2 lockers to try and keep all their stuff in. And if you go in the back, this would be the furnace room or the heat pump room back there, electrical. So this is where we have the outside bicycle storage. One of the biggest things we deal with a lot of people on bicycles, whether we're taking them for evidence or we're booking people in jail. There's a lot of people that ride bicycles in Crescent City. So one of the problems we don't currently have a covered storage for them. We get a lot of rain in Crescent City, as everybody knows. And if we are having to store those for a long time, if people don't come back for them, found property-wise, they can start to rust pretty quickly with the salt in the air. Then this is the current men's bathroom. It hasn't been upgraded for a while. Well, we did upgrade and put this vanity in here this year. So it did upgrade the sink, but that's the current status of that. I think that's it as far as the pictures. Any questions on those or anything else? Not seeing any. I will go forward with a walk around of the vehicles then.
Hey, Rich, why don't we take a quick little break on this one, then we'll hit sort of staffing, and then when we hit vehicles, we can come back to it and kind of give everybody a break from the normal PowerPoint. So no, Chair Schlong, no questions from the committee at this point?
I was unclear on the number of officers. I didn't keep track.
Currently, we're at 13 sworn officers, including myself. So you have 12 available for patrol. Myself, and then you have Christina, who's our civilian records clerk, so 14 total.
And she's in charge of records?
That's her official titles, records. She's in charge of she also does our registration program for sex, arson registrants. There's a lot of work involved in that too. And then also evidence room.
Thank you.
And Chief Griffin, where do you keep all of the records? Is outside of the cases?
Currently, as far as you just talking about paperwork records, and so there's a couple different places we keep them. Some of them used to be kept over at the city yard. We had a secure facility there. I've transported those all over here. They date back currently to the 80s. We're going back through the records retention policy and purging what we can. So some of them are kept outside in the shed out there that's locked and secured. That picture I showed you is also some cases that are past the, I think the current 2 years. The current 2 years are kept up in Christina's office and filing cabinets.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the Oversight Committee?
I'd just like to point out one thing, that is that the building that they're in was not designed to be a police department. It was a lawyer's office. It's a problem.
It was donated, wasn't it, by Sophia Hooper's family?
It was Mr. Hooper's office, yes.
Yeah.
So
I know
we
she
currently
takes
own
a
the
lot of,
building?
pardon me, I'm sorry.
This is Matt. So we currently own that building.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Eric, is there any opportunity with the lot maybe adjacent to expand the department?
Yes, and so we will be getting into that a little bit later in the presentation. We'll take a look at the lot and some of those improvements and the costs associated with them.
Okay. Mayor Greeno, did you want to address anything with the council?
Not really, unless the council has any questions about our current status of our police department.
Yeah, I do. I would encourage the Measure S committee to physically go there and look, because those pictures, they were churched up, in my opinion. That place is not looking good.
Right.
It's hard to show you exactly in pictures. It was requested I do a walkthrough video for officer safety. I'm not comfortable with that, to be honest. That's given a tutorial of our place if somebody wants to come in here. I'm open any day of the week, basically any time if any of you are interested in walking by, and I'm an open book. So whatever you want to talk about or see, I got no problem. But it is hard to keep officer safety in mind and give you a full video tour at the same time. So I do apologize.
Understood.
Do you think it would be beneficial for the oversight committee to take a tour?
I definitely do. Was that for me, Mayor?
Yeah, for either you or Eric.
My personal opinion, I think so. I mean, Councilmember Smith, as he said, he's came on a ride along. I showed him full access. I mean, my opinions and everything. And a lot of these things, I can show you the pictures and the videos of the cars until you get up close and personal with those. You don't really see it until you walk through the back door and you kind of see that first. I think he put it the best. We're out there dealing with everything we deal with. And then the first thing you see when you come in is that back door and you come in. Our officers do a great job in handling what we do and where we work. And we're not complaining by any means. But me looking at it as a boss, want to retain them. Yeah, I agree with him. There's some issues. So I would definitely encourage anybody that wants to come through and do a walk through. So, and again, 7 days a week, just let me know. We'll schedule it.
All right, thank you.
So just to follow up on that, would the oversight committee like to make an appointment with Chief Griffin individually or to do a tour together? If so, we would need to post that as a meeting, I believe.
Probably individually would be preferred right now, especially with our COVID protocols.
Agreed. Okay, thank you.
We could do it 2 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested in going through the building.
Yeah. Feel free then to just reach out to Richard and set up a time.
Okay, as long as he doesn't cuff me and keep me there.
No, sir. We don't have any holding facilities here, so you're okay.
Okay.
We may sign you up as a reserve, Mr. Perry.
I'll see.
All right. So there's not any other questions. Rich, if you can, though, and Robin will get you everybody's email. We can send an email out to everyone with your email on it, and then you can just reply right back to the chief. So we'll keep this going. So there's a lot of good discussions to be had. This is one of them, and we're definitely going to come back to the building piece of it and what some of those options are, and the dropping costs associated with them, even for myself. That deals with it on a little more regular basis. But so when everyone can see my screen, correct? All right, so we'll jump back into this. So police department needs, right? So we're going to be talking staffing. Some of the things we're going to be talking about were articulated in the Measure S campaign: additional officers, dedicated detective position. I'll be reevaluating canine officers. The department's had 2 for a long time, and then when Officer Vitruba retired, we're down to 1 now, so it's time to reevaluate that and that position as a whole. And then the possible position of a promotion of one of our sergeants to a lieutenant. So that's what we'll be talking about staffing wise. We're going to hit vehicles, both patrol and specialty vehicles. Talking equipment, body cameras and tasers in particular, and then facilities, which we got a little brief look at the existing facilities, and a look at the existing police station, some of the improvements that we can do there, and then that long-term overall view of a new station at some point in time. So this is kind of the 4 areas. Jumping right into staffing. So, Committee Member Perry, to your point, so you have 14 full-time FTEs, and that includes the record specialist position. Previously or earlier this year, the council, these were just officer positions. The council allowed the promotion of 2 of these to sergeant positions. And so that way we have supervision on each of the shifts. This works as far as supervision goes, but it still doesn't complete the overall thought process of a sergeant and 2 officers on, which is kind of the overall ideal staffing for this department. You can see we have 1 SRO position. Actually, we have 1 SRO. This position is vacant right now, so there is just 1 SRO. You have Chief Griffin. What he has done in the meantime to sort of make this work is he's done kind of a hybrid type of approach. And he's taken 1 of the officers that would normally have had the ideal coverage and switched them to a swing shift. So now this officer works from noon until midnight. So a typical shift is from 6 to 6. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is kind of how the day and night shift works. This officer splits those 2 shifts in the busiest time of the day and night. So it kind of facilitates it, yet still doesn't quite meet the overall need. But hats off to Chief Griffin and his thought process. It's worked out well for the department. Going into the overall phasing plan, that's where ideally we would hire 2 officer positions and also have a detective position. So those are sort of those 3 positions that were talked about, kind of this phase 4 final phase that the council approved this past year. Looking at that, it's about $90,000 a year for the officer position, and the detective's $95,000. Now, just some nuances on how this would work, and talking with the chief is you wouldn't go out and hire a detective position. That's just not best protocol for any officer to get pigeonholed sort of like that and have that skill set. So this would almost be a 2-year assignment. Is that what you're thinking, Chief? Something like that?
What we'll be looking at is a 2-year assignment with an option for an extra year at the request of their supervisor, basically, to be extended. And then if nobody wants it after that, sometimes it happens, they can reapply for it.
So this would basically be, once it's open, the officers could then apply for it. One of them would be rotated into the detective position, obtain that skill set, be immersed in that for a couple of years, and then be rotated back to patrol. So they don't lose any of the skill sets. Yet you still have a dedicated detective position that's able to take cases, investigate them throughout, and see them to their fulfillment. Whereas currently right now, without the detective position, they're on their day shift or they're on their night shift, and then they have to basically switch off a bit or work extensive overtime. Ms. Kyle.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Heidi.
I'm just curious how, if there's only $5,000 salary difference, so this detective position, you're basically going to have your entire staff at some point will have the detective skill set. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I can answer that, Mr. Weir.
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be one of the
All right.
benefits you're looking at is you have a person that goes in there for 2 or 3 years, they come back on patrol, so they're not becoming stagnant after 10 years as a detective. And now I'm bringing that experience and that casework and training, and they'd be able to teach people back when they're on patrol as well. And then we cycle through it. So yeah, eventually after a few terms, you'd have better experience overall on patrol.
No, I think that sounds like a great idea.
You end up being muted, Heidi.
Oops, sorry. My novice of how police departments work, I was under the impression that a detective position paid more, significantly more than an officer position would pay.
In some departments, that's correct. In our current MOU, it's I believe it's a 5% pay bump in what the currently has been negotiated.
Okay, I think it's a great idea. I like it. wanted a little clarification on that. Thank you.
If I can add a little bit on that, Mr. Weir. Oh, sorry, Ms. Long had a question.
Okay. I was going to follow up with what kind of training is this detective position going to receive? Because I know that that's going to be an additional cost. You can't just throw somebody into that position and expect them to have the skills needed to be on the job right away.
Right, and that's a great question. That's one of the things we're actually lacking is the detective skills as far as like homicide course. That's a 2-week course to send off through ICI post-certified class. We'd be looking at sending, if they don't already have it, a couple of our officers already do, is the 2-week basic course for detectives. And then I'd definitely focus on the sexual assault course. That's one of the classes I learned the most from. A lot of officers are very timid per se when those courses come up. That's a great course. I'd love to get every officer through it. And then also our homicide course. That's one of the things that came up actually when I was working detectives with the sheriff's office. We had a homicide happen in the city and you didn't have the staffing currently to be able to work it correctly as it should be. Typically, you're going to work those day in, day out for several days, or you have the ability to lose a lot of information. So I ended up taking that case over. So that's where the need for the city to have that detective that can be called in, 2 a.m. in the morning, all of a sudden, hey, you're working 24 hours straight on this, because that's when you're getting your best information. Right now, what would have to happen is that patrol officer gets the case, 6 o'clock rolls around. Okay, well, I got to leave. Hey, this is what I worked on. Can you do this, this, and this in between your calls? So in between priority calls, they might be able to do some follow-up. And then it gets turned back around into the other officer if they didn't go on their days off. So, or we're going to have to authorize a lot of overtime for them to work it. So that's the benefit of the detective. Plus, you get that kind of veteran skills once they go back to patrol with all this. So at least that's the hope of it. Yes, I agree with you. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of associated cost going up with the training. We've been doing a great job with our training program is getting in-house instructors. Currently, we're going to be able to do all of our perishable skills training in-house, and we're looking to save training costs as far as that. Typically, we'd have to send people at least to Eureka for 3 or 4 days for that. And so you're not only looking for them being out, so you're going to backfill that with overtime, but you have per diem hotel costs. So we've been doing more in-house instruction. So, and we're going to be able to do that. And we're actually probably going to have that done here in just about 2 months. So.
And is there an opportunity to cross-train with the other departments in the county or the prison?
There's always those opportunities. We're always looking for them. Yes. And it does happen a lot.
Are there any other questions?
I do see we have Sonny Valero, our human resource administrator. I know Sonny's done some research on this topic and talked to some other departments. Sonny?
Yeah, I just wanted to add about the detective designation. Excuse me. I have reached out to other police departments throughout the state, and it is fairly common for a detective designation to be assigned versus an actual staffed detective. And also not all departments give a pay increase for a detective's designation. So that is, some of them that I reached out for or to, they were actually like, well, what city do you work with? Because they didn't have it in their department. So that was something that they used for training and moving forward and building their skill set, and they rotated. So not all departments have that assigned position, and also they're not all, they don't all get paid any extra for it. So just wanted to add that on there.
All right. Thank you, Sonny. So I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen again. So this was,
before you move on, can I just ask the council if there's any questions about anything that we've talked about so far? The oversight committee got a chance. I just wanted to make sure that the council got a chance. All right. Thank you, Eric.
no, not a problem. And we'll also need to make sure we take time probably here and there to ask the public if there's any questions.
Okay, well, let's just do that real quick. Is there any public comment on our discussion so far?
Doesn't look like it on the Zoom side.
All right, thank you.
All right, so continuing on the staffing. So this is what we talked about previously and some of the costs associated with those positions. And these would be the part of those ongoing costs that we would have to be cognizant of. In talking with Chief Griffin, there are two other requests that, or not requests, but two other ideas that he thinks would really complete the department and add value to the department. One is the lieutenant position. So this wouldn't be an additional position. And this isn't a brand new position for this department either. We did have a lieutenant at one point in time, and then through staffing changes and retirements and whatnot, this position has not been filled for some time. So in our current structure, though, the thought is, instead of having another position here, this would be a promotion of a sergeant to a lieutenant. So this lieutenant would still work this day shift. He would still have, or he or she would still have the supervision of the officers, but also would have additional responsibilities. Rich, do you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah. So what that lieutenant position would be, basically a ranking sergeant position at that point. The title, it works basically as the right-hand person for me. They'd be focusing on training for being second in command. When I'm gone, there'd be no more need to assign a acting chief. They'd be acting chief. There'd be a little bit of savings there, because whenever you're assigned acting chief, you get a 5% pay bump for that time I'm gone. That training would be more specific and focused to that one person as compared to 4 sergeants that I'm trying to train up for when I'm gone, if the emergencies happen, all that. Succession planning in the department, if something were to happen to me, they're ready to step in if needed for his acting chief. That's a great benefit to the city. If internal affairs investigations happen, that person, then we have that extra step in between me and the sergeants, if it happens to be with one of the sergeants or for whatever reason complaints are filed, et cetera. This person would also take all the extra duties that are currently assigned to the sergeants, such as vehicle maintenance, equipment, et cetera, stuff like that. That's divvied out between the sergeants. Now this person's going to be in charge of training, FTO, stuff like that, scheduling. So it takes away those duties from those sergeants so they can focus on their job of being a good supervisor and developing our officers and responding to calls for that. And that way it's kind of a me and that person taking over all those duties, working together on the day shifts. And my plan for that would be to rotate that lieutenant back and forth between the front side of the week and the back side of the week. So they have influence on all 4 shifts, or at least they have interaction at shift briefings. That would also allow us to keep with our policy of having everybody work at least 1 night shift and at least 1 day shift throughout the year, so they don't become stagnant on their regular staffing or get used to being on 1 shift. And it helps with development and officer safety, because it is a different beast, I would say, to work day shift as compared to night shift, and the type of people you're dealing with and the type of calls and investigations. So that's what I'd be looking for in that lieutenant position.
Excellent. Cost-wise for that particular position too, since it is just a promotion, and then you're taking a non-exempt position or a position that would qualify for overtime, and then this position would not qualify for overtime anymore. They'd be exempt. And so you'd be looking at a cost of about $10,000. So it's relatively small for the type of benefits that that Chief is talking about. So you have that piece of it. And then the next piece is to add an additional canine officer. So this canine officer could go and just be a regular patrol officer, or could go to this SRO, and that's the school resource officer. And talking with Chief, and I'll let him expand on it a little bit, possibly not looking at another bite dog like we currently have with Lieutenant Kai. We would be more looking for a floppy ear. Is that the right term, Chief?
That is the right term. That's not the right dog per se. We'd be looking more like a black lab. The reason for that, when you're talking about the officers we're looking at, one specifically, we put it out and vetted it to everybody in the departments. We've narrowed it down to the one person that's interested in it and has that perfect setting at home to be the ability to do it. Not everybody can be a canine officer. I can't just say, hey, yesterday you're patrol, today you're canine. That's not good for the officer. That's not good for the canine. It's got to be a good match. We believe we have that currently. We don't have an officer with a lot of experience on, though. So when you take on a apprehension or a bite dog, that's an increased liability also when you have an officer that's still trying to figure out how to be an officer to begin with, let alone having this dog on the end of a leash that at any time could bite somebody. So in talking with Sergeant Lopez, as far as going forward, and also working with the community, our goals, what we'd like to do, community outreach. I think the floppy ear dog would be a great thing. We're still looking at narcotics detection and tracking also, as far as what it would be able to do. What that does for us is bring the cost down a little bit also. A bite apprehension dog is looking about $12,000. Floppy ear dog, we're looking at one right now, is $8,000. The training academy goes from 5 weeks down to 4 weeks. Also, the standards of training, we're not having to travel as far as we currently do to keep up our training maintenance for the bite dog because of the liability. Now we can train locally and keep up on that. And that will cut down drastically for the overtime costs on that. And the community outreach is, we can do anything we want at any community events. As soon as we bring Lieutenant Kai out, everything changes and it's all about Lieutenant Kai, which is a great tool for us to bridge that gap between the community and us if it's there. Kids wise, adult wise, it doesn't matter. You're going to put a smile on your face and want to get some love from Lieutenant Kai. So I believe that would truly take us that next step to community engagement to have this type of dog also.
Especially in the school sort of setting. And so like Rich said, the initial sort of cost or annual cost is going to be about $8,000 per year. That accounts for the extra additional pay for the canine officer themselves, as well as, you know, food, vet, those types of budgets. So it's about $4,000 for the additional pay, $4,000 for the food and vet, and additional costs for the canine itself. And then you have the initial startup, which is going down to training, purchasing the dog, those types of things. And we do have some grant dollars currently to help pay for canine type improvements.
We also currently have 2 canine vehicles with pretty low mileage, so that wouldn't be one of the initial costs either.
Okay, so that's kind of the staffing piece of it. As we move forward, some of the things we'll need to talk about is timing. So those are we have 3 positions and those promotions that we had talked about. How it would work as far as the positions themselves go is you would hire actually 3 officer positions, then an existing officer would get the assignment of detective. It's at least how it's being thought about at this time. So that's kind of how that would work. So you'll be hiring 3 new officers. When an officer comes on, and Rich can speak more to this, but basically they go on FTO, Field Training Officer Program, and that's a 16-week typically. Is that correct, Rich?
Yes, if you do a full FTO program post standards, it's 16 weeks. If we happen to get a lateral who has been through a field training program before with a post-certified agency, we don't have to do an actual program. We can do basically orientation to make sure they're meeting standards, our standards for a patrol officer. But we're looking at most likely 16 weeks.
And so if the committee and council want to say hire all of these positions, you know, eventually, or even now, the timing would need to be considered. You bring all 3 new officers on, that really creates a lot of work for the officers and FTO, and try to get them all through. It'd be much better to have a staggered type of situation where you bring one on, get them through FTO, and then you could bring your next officer on. That staggering of positions also creates one-time savings. So, you know, you're going to get to that full staffing, or could if the committee and council recommend it. But in the meantime, you're going to have some funds that could be allocated to other one-time expenses.
I got a question.
Yes.
So originally we talked about 2 officers, a detective position, a canine, and a lieutenant position. Sorry, now you're saying 3 officers. Is that because you're going to promote the detective and lieutenant within the department?
That's the basic thought, is that, yeah, you would want to do that rather than hire someone from the outside, especially in this type of situation. So yes.
So we're not required to open the job up?
Rich, do you want to address it?
For officer, or for, you talking about for lieutenant, we were not required to open it up. That would be in-house because we don't have that extra position. For detectives, we're not required to, and canines, we're not required to, no.
And similar to like the SRO officer now, you know, it's an internal position because that will end up rotating. And so you wouldn't necessarily need to open it up to the outside. And when you're talking lieutenant, like you said, because it's not a new position. It's the old position's not there anymore.
Yeah, okay. So 3 new patrol officers to start. I mean,
Yes.
staggered actually, but okay, got it. Thank you.
Sonny, anything else to add on the human resource side on that? I said no. Okay. So that's it. So these are the basic costs that we're going to be looking at long-term on this. So you have your 3 officers at roughly $90,000 per officer, $271,000. The new detective assignment, $4,000 to $5,000. Additional canine assignment, that's that $8,000 that covers the officer and the canine, and lieutenant promotion of $10,000. If it does get staggered where you bring one on, say in July, and that's about as quick as we could possibly do it, and we'll discuss that more at the end of this meeting as well. Your next one coming on 6 months later in January, and then your next one coming on that following July. That would result in all 3 officers coming on by July 1st, 2022, and also creates a staggering savings of $130,000 in next year versus the following year, which they'll all 3 be working full time. Okay.
I have another question.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. So you're talking about hiring before the sales tax is implemented?
No. So the sales tax gets implemented in April 1st.
Right.
And so we'll have 1 quarter before the July 1st. Now, in order to meet that, and we'll kind of talk about some of the timing, we would need to start that recruitment process beforehand, sort of anticipating these funds. And when we get to the financial piece of it, Linda can kind of weigh in on it, but we are expecting roughly about a quarter of it to come in each quarter. There's Linda as well. And so I believe, Linda, you can speak to it as far as how much we're expecting in this particular quarter.
Hi, so the timing of it, we are anticipating for the April, May, June, which would be our first quarter of receiving it, about 300,000. And then in the next fiscal year, which starts July 1st, that's when we would start that 1.3 million per fiscal year. So what Mr. Weir is talking about is that if we start the first officer, say potentially July 1st, and then the second one starts January 1st, what that means is that in that first fiscal year, you really have 1.5 officers that will be paid for in that year. And then by the time you hire the third one in the following fiscal year, you've got all 3 for the whole year. That first year, because of staggering, you're pretty much only paying half of that staffing cost. And that's only a one-time thing. Starting in the second year, it'd be the full cost every year.
April, or I'm sorry, Ms. Lever, when we get the first 3 months of revenue, April, May, June, when do you expect to actually receive those dollars?
In June and July.
Okay. I didn't know it came that quickly, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
Any other questions from the committee?
And do we have any questions from the council? If not, I do have one question. As far as the new officers coming in, what's the difference in pay for a brand new officer coming in as opposed to a lateral transfer generally?
That is a good question. And I believe this scenario shows a sort of a mid-step. So there's 5 steps to an officer position, step 1 being the lowest, step 5 being the highest. This assumes a step 3. So typically your new officers, brand new officers are going to come in at a step 1. You have a lateral transfer, depending on the experience, could come in at that 3 level, typically somewhere in there, depending on experience. But Linda, do you have the range?
I do. So for on the sort of the lower end of the range, if you have a step 1 officer with benefits, you're looking at approximately $75,000 per year. And if you have a step 5. With the higher benefits, you're looking at approximately 105. So that's why we're using the number 90 as sort of an average for budgeting purpose.
Okay, thank you.
And
You're
that's
welcome.
obviously fully loaded too with benefits. So.
Yes.
All right, so share my screen again. So kind of just running through some of the timelines here. And again, these are some of the earlier timelines. There's going to be a lot of choices for the committee to make recommendations on and the council to decide on. And so as you start to stagger positions or choose when to start positions, that does have a key role on your finances and how much you will need to budget. So with this scenario here, if you have this officer starting here, that would free up an officer probably around November. It would allow this officer to get off of FTO, assume the patrol positions, and then you could start that detective position right around that time. Canine could start really at any time because it could just go with an officer or an existing sort of position. And same with that lieutenant, that could start at any time. So those are some of just the timing nuances. Talked about that. The other piece of it, though, that we haven't really talked about is by hiring these officers, or at least 1 or 2. What it does, if you look at your staffing chart again, now you have additional officers. If an officer has to be out on training, or an officer has to be out on family medical leave for whatever reason, you can have a proper staffing to not work your officers in overtime. Really, you could have the same staffing we have now for that limited time period to get you through that time period. Overtime creates burnout. Overtime creates officer, fatigue, as well as it costs a lot of money to have that. And so that's the extra benefit of this. So currently, right now, without having the positions in place, our average overtime has been roughly around $135,000 a year on the police department. It's down significantly this year because we're fully staffed. And if we add these officers, we're estimating it can come down to a conservative average of around $50,000. So with that, that would be an annual savings of $85,000 per year to the police department and the city's general fund. Questions, Rich, any more to add on that? Chief?
No, the benefits to it are, we significantly reduced it over the past 2 years. We're also seeing officers have more time at home, their family life, the reasons we actually do the job. So that's a huge thing because we work, the schedule we work 1 week is 36 hours, 3 days. Then the next week it's 4 days. If they're not able to get an 8-hour day, they're working 48 hours that week. And they weren't able to get the 8-hour days for a while. Now they're only working 44 hours a week. And at the end of your shift, that's to get that extra 4 hours off. I mean, I have some grumpy people if they don't get 30 hours now, or 8-hour days. So that's what that cover shift does. So and it just helps in the retention and wellness.
Sonny, anything else from human resource? Chief pretty well cover it. Okay, excellent.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Chair.
Sorry to slow you down a little bit, but I'm just thinking about my time on the council, and one of the things that was always important to me was our law enforcement officers. It was always a priority for me, and I believe that early on in my first term, we were able to give the range for the police officers an increase. And I'm just curious if that has happened since then. And if not, is it possible to look at budgeting some of this savings into increasing the range for the officers as a whole, as a department?
The department actually has had significant increases over the past several years. Going through COVID, each of the MOUs chose to just extend without any increases. And so I know that we do keep track of where we're trying to keep up so we don't get in that position where we get really far behind again. And I think we are kind of in a spot where we're not dramatically behind at this point. Sonny, do you have any insight on that?
No, however, there's a lot of other, agencies that do large sign-on bonuses and things like that as well for new recruits. So there's different different things. We're right. Depending on where you live, you know, things are going to change, but we're right in the middle ground, I think. But we could fall behind at some point here, and I don't know what's going to happen with the economy in the next year. But for a small agency, we're where we should be.
I'm happy to hear that.
And we can provide that information to the committee too, so you can see the exact range and maybe some comparison cities.
Are there any other questions?
Any questions from the council? All right.
Okay, so that covers staffing for the most part. Moving on to vehicles. And if you guys are going to take a department tour, that's going to be the best way to see it, because the video that Rich has doesn't really even do it justice. So we can kind of, we'll hit mileage, and if you guys want to see the video, you can, but if you're going to go to the police station, you can certainly see it that way too. Or if you pay attention to some of the cars driving around, you can see that we have a need when it comes to vehicles. So when we talk vehicles, we have patrol, and then we have special assignment vehicles, detective, canine, SRO, and the chief vehicle. So here's kind of the chart of our current vehicles. So the patrol vehicles we have, you can see they range from 2008 to 2017. They range from 47,000 miles on them all the way up to 158,000 miles. 158,000 miles on a patrol vehicle is not where you want to be, especially going code 3. It's not conducive for the officer as far as that much wear, and then also just the wear and tear on the vehicle. This vehicle takes a lot of maintenance to keep going. You can see some of the other ones. This is the SRO vehicle, so it's an older vehicle, and it's getting up there on mileage. And then we have our 2 canine vehicles. So you see the chief currently, because we don't have a canine, is driving one of the canine vehicles, a newer canine. I have a total of 8 vehicles. We look at needs, and this is something we'll need to decide upon as well, or at least the council will need to decide. And what is that standard? Typical for a department, 10 years or 100,000 miles is kind of where you want to replace those. Obviously, we're outside of those parameters when you look back at this chart here. You know, these vehicles in particular should have been replaced some time ago, but our funding simply just didn't allow for it. So first, the standards are very important, and then department needs. So patrol vehicles, 5. That allows for a rotation of vehicles. Allows for the officers to have those vehicles as needed, day or night shift, or even as the shifts switch, or if there's extra officers on. Especially 2 canine vehicles, which we have, and then detective for a vehicle for your detective, your SRL, your lieutenant, and your chief. So 11 vehicles in total is the preferred number. A lot of these specialty vehicles, especially for the chief in particular, and chief, you can talk to as far as who else would take home their vehicle. Would it be the lieutenant and detective as well?
In the best case scenario, yes. Detective is going to be the one that gets called out more, probably more so than lieutenant. The lieutenant and myself, I get called out a few times, and it's more of a emergency operations vehicle at that point. There could be a lot of different things I carry in mind for that command staff issue. We could get by with the lieutenant coming in because they're on a patrol shift, coming in and having it, to save cost. But best case scenario would be to have them have that take home. Currently, the MOU for the SRO includes a take home vehicle for that. And so the one thing I want to add is, 100,000 miles for a lot of people, they drive their cars for longer than that. What you need to understand, if you don't already, is these are code 3 law enforcement vehicles. They get a lot of hard miles. 100,000 miles on a law enforcement vehicle is several 100,000 miles on a regular vehicle. Stop and go, code 3 running. It's really hard on the vehicles. So that's just understand that is all I'm asking.
So before we move on to the next one, so we looked at cost for replacement of the vehicles. Basically, a new patrol car or really any one of these vehicles is about $50,000, and that's fully loaded, lights and sirens, code 3 capable. So that's kind of that dollar amount that you're looking at. If we want to replace one vehicle or replace each of the vehicles every 10 years, we have 11 of them. We would need to budget $55,000 a year, each and every year as we move forward. We have a need right now to replace several vehicles, at least 2 immediately, and then to start at least on that pace. There are some grant opportunities we could go and chase. And so if we do get, say, a USDA grant, then that would put a match for about 50%. So with our funding for that year, instead of 1, we could get 2. If we could get that, which we think is an option in the future, we could possibly get to the place where we are simply just needing to budget that $55,000 every year after we make that one-time investment of $100,000 this first year. So that's kind of the staff recommendation on it. Chief?
Yeah, if I can just add, yeah, the USDA, I was in contact with them, continued contact. It's going to be 55% match from the city. And that would be looking at possibly getting 2 vehicles, maybe later this fiscal year. If not, we'd have to wait till the end of it or October when it resets for that. My working kind of theory, I guess, for patrol vehicles, I would really love to add a couple patrol trucks with beds. That way, because a lot of what we deal with right now is we're returning shopping carts to stores. So they're not used to push a bunch of stuff around the city. It's helped clean up Beachfront Park and the surrounding areas there. We're still trying to enforce that more and more. Throwing those in the back of a car instead of handcuffing them to our front bumper is a lot easier by far. And again, that goes back to the wear and tear of the vehicles if we're transporting bicycles on our front bumpers and the safety, the vision out the front. So if we're doing search warrants or even just setting out cones for the 4th of July, anything like that, we can help out with a lot of things. So I would like to have 2 trucks available in that kind of the 5-car patrol pool. So 3 SUVs, 2 trucks. And just kind of keep that in mind in the replacement. And looking at the trucks, they're actually cheaper to get, a few thousand, and it kind of averages out. So it's not like I'm asking like 10 more grand per vehicle to get a truck. So that's what I'm looking at.
I have a quick question. So how much mileage do we put on these vehicles generally in a year?
Great question.
For the patrol vehicles specifically.
Typically, you're going to be looking at 7,500 to 10,000 a year. So that 10-year mark would be about 100,000 on average. Some of ours, if they go down, we're looking at 3 patrol officers on shift. If we're full staffed if we get the 3 officers on and do the promotions, you'd have 3 patrols out there. You can't run those cars 24 hours a day because then the mileage goes up and the wear and tear. So that would be having 5 available, wear and tear goes down. And if one of them has a brake job needed or tires. So patrol, 7,500 to 10,000 is a good estimate. The canine vehicles, a lot of the mileage right now is being used to go back and forth to training in Chico. That's where our training group is. We're hopeful that may get moved to the coast. There's some things going on that we're hopeful for. It's not going to be permanent. So the one I'm driving is at 30,000 miles. The only reason I'm driving that is there's an issue with the door popper. It's actually Sergeant Lopez's vehicle. As soon as we get that fixed, it'll go back to him. But yeah, that's about the mileage. It just depends. My car, whatever's assigned to me for the command vehicle, I would be looking at more of a larger SUV based on the equipment. That's going to be probably far less miles because a lot of what I do is here typing and reviewing stuff. So.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the council?
Who services the vehicles? Do you do it at the city shop?
That is correct. We have 2 mechanics on that service the vehicles unless it's a larger job or something they can't fix or if it's factory warranty. So depending on the type of truck or vehicles we get, we either have to go to Eureka or further if it's Ford or Dodge, depending.
We're very fortunate with our mechanics, and the senior mechanic Jason Borges is very skilled when it comes to police vehicles, and he's certified fire mechanic as well. So we're fortunate to have him.
The initial setup would be probably outsourced, which is typical for the lights and sirens and everything that don't come with the vehicle. But after that, I definitely agree with Mr. Weir. We're lucky to have Mr. Borges and the mechanics we have. So.
All right. None of the other questions. We'll move on from the vehicle side of things. Let's see here. Okay. Moving on to some of the equipment needs of the department, and I will let Chief basically talk about this. Chief knows it a lot better than I do. He lives it, he breathes it, and he is passionate about this particular subject in regard to cameras and tasers. Chief, all yours.
Body cameras. I was the first officer deputy in this county to wear a body camera. I feel naked when I go out without one. It is not a good feeling. Liability wise, protects you a lot, records everything. It's essential now. I couldn't imagine doing this job anymore without one. With that, I've had the opportunity to wear a taser camera when I was working with the sheriff's office, and I saw the benefits of that and that program. And now the watch guard system that we have. There's definitely a significant upgrade that we'll be looking at with the tasers, the Axon cameras by Taser Company, in my opinion. First and foremost, the mounting system. I've been in a couple incidents, I guess you could say, fights. And the first thing that happens with the current mounting system is that our cameras go flying off to the side. They end up on the ground upside down, and all you get is maybe some sound. I did not have that issue with the larger and better magnets on the Axon cameras. I can't remember one that it went off or fell off of me. I was involved in a very major incident. Unfortunately, officer involved shooting. It stuck on me through the entire event. So I'm very grateful to have that there. That's very vital. That cuts down a lot of liability costs and increased transparency to the community. So currently, if you look at our system, it creates a lot of extra work where it doesn't need to be. I talked about Christina earlier. Part of her records management includes making copies of the video footage when the district attorney requests it or when there's public records requests. That involves her leaving from front office, going back there, reviewing back through all the body camera footage, making the copy of that CD, and then sending it off. It also involves Fritz, our one IT person that the city has, in the maintenance of it and the upkeep. He has to continue to check if there's upgrades to it. Currently, if we hit our max on storage, he actually comes over and makes a physical copy of that and maintains it. So that takes time for him to come over and do that also. Our officers, if you use your body camera, one of the other major downfalls is the battery doesn't last the entire shift, and it's not very quick on the recharging. So if you go out and record it, you're coming in, you got to put it on the upload section, the upload station that we have. It uploads, you take it off that, you put it on the charger, it'll charge. If in the middle of that upload, you have a hot call and you got to run out the door, you grab that off the upload, it stops completely and restarts. Once they're done with that, hopefully it recharges for the rest of their shift. So we're having some issues with those. When it records, I have no problem with the video footage or the audio. It's great, and it's better than not having them. The upgrades with the taser system is for our officers. Basically, they record out in the streets. They come in, there'll be a station at the back door. They put it on there. It automatically uploads, upgrades or updates the system, sends it to a cloud evidence storage. That cloud evidence storage also contains a set protocol for statute of limitations of keeping the evidence. So it maintains that. So we're taking Fritz out of the equation as far as coming over and making copies of it. That also includes a system that if the district attorney's office wants to request a case, they have access to that system. It takes Christina out of that. They can just log in. Okay, I need this date and time for this officer. There's the video. That also gives us access to it at any computer, not just one workstation. We can access it on our phones also. The ability for that, we've used it a couple times in the field. When I was with the sheriff's office, you actually duct tape it to a pole. You put that up in the attic, and you can look at it on your phone live instead of placing your own head up in the attic when you're looking for somebody that possibly has a gun. So that increases officer safety. My officers are going to spend less time making copies of it and downloading and doing all that. Also, the battery lasts for full shifts. Actually, it's expected longer than our 12-hour shifts. Some agencies out there don't do 12-hour shifts. So if you're looking at battery life, take that in consideration if you do the research on it. And when that's uploading, if the officer has a hot call, that remembers exactly if it's at 57% download, it remembers it. They pop the camera off, put it on, run out, do the call, come back, and it starts from the 57%, not from before. Again, Christina, she's basically out of the system at that point, other than maybe some reviewing footage for public records requests. This includes the scrubbing. Also, if we get a public records request, there's juveniles involved or anything else involved, you can blur out one person and it automatically follows that person for the whole video, even if that person goes off screen. So there's a lot of good quality upgrades as far as that. And the mounting system, I cannot say enough about that. I've been involved in, I mean, everybody gets a lawsuit every now and then, and having video footage there, you can play it. If somebody makes a false complaint, it goes away right there because there's not a lot of disputing that. So, and so that's a lot of my opinion on as far as that system itself. I can't say enough about it as far as the upgrade. Any questions on that? Sorry, I can get talking a lot. So,
Terrific. What are we currently using? Just the camera
the WatchGuard system.
WatchGuard.
It's I believe Motorola owns it now.
And then the camera you want to get has a taser attached.
Taser company owns it. It's called the Axon body
camera. It's just the brand. Okay.
Currently, our what's that?
I said I thought you were getting 2-in-1 when I saw a taser. I thought maybe it was a combination.
It is this. So we're going to present a couple options, but that's the brand new Taser 7. We're currently using the Taser X2s. So I was just talking about the body cameras right now, and I'll go into what those provide. Currently, just for I guess full information, our body cameras are on a 3-year warranty, and most of them, I believe, come up this year. So we're going to have to look at going and buying new body cameras anyways if we stay with the same system, same cameras. Ms. Guy.
Vice Chair Kine.
Oh, sorry.
So you've obviously done quite a bit of research, and do you have just a ballpark of your overtime savings that purchasing these new cameras and all the other benefits that go along with it? Do you have an idea of how much you'll be saving on all the other issues that you've had with those, like the labor cost?
I'm not sure about the numbers on it. I could say as far as officers per shift, probably 1 to 2 hours, depending on what they're doing.
That's quite a bit of time.
That's a lot of time that they're back out on the street doing what they can do, you know, and reviewing the footage. Just easier. It's a way better system as far as that. Liability wise, definitely that's enough said about that. But Fritz, talking with him, basically, it's not a lot like per week that he's looking at, but when the time comes, it comes a lot, and he's there for a while. So I can't say like 1 to 2 hours per week or so, but when something happens, it's more like 5 or 6 hours. You know, he's got to do that. The evidence storage is secure as far as start to finish. So in talking to him, he also wanted to mention that. So as soon as starts uploading to the cloud, everything's encrypted. There's no issues with that at all, start to finish. So that kind of takes him out of having to worry about that too. He definitely has a lot to worry about. So Christina, again, daily, it just depends on how many records requests we get. Sometimes she's back there half a day. And again, that's a lot of extra stress on her that I'd love to take away, because she's got to run back and forth to the front, answer phones if nobody else is available. Upon keeping up on the evidence, everything she does, so she does a lot for us, and this would go a long ways to reducing a lot of stress for her too.
Do you have a cost?
What's that?
Do you have an estimated cost?
Yeah, it's kind of rolled in at the end, but as far as new equipment, depending on what we're getting, that's about the range for depending on per year what they'd be.
Is that just for the cameras?
For the cameras and the tasers.
So we can, it depends on the evidence storage. Sorry. Ms. Geim, do you want me to answer that or go to Ms. Geim? Or
why don't you answer Chair Shalong first, and then we'll come to Ms. Geim. And I think Linda had a comment as well too.
Right. So currently, just for tasers, we're paying $6,000 a year on a 5-year contract just for those. What we're presenting right now, this is going to be the final cost of this is, I think, upwards of $43,000 a year, but that includes tasers and cameras and a virtual reality training. So it's like what we're presenting to you tonight is all the bells and whistles. But then we can put it back down. That average out per month per officer about $239 or $250, depending on where we go with evidence management and going down with licensing. you can get that down as low as $159 per officer per month through the program. So
So my question was, do you already have anything budgeted this year since you said that the cameras were, the warranty was coming up this year?
no, the only thing right now I had currently budgeted was it was allowed by the city council for me to buy a new camera. There was $1,400 for that. We've waited on that based on where we're going forward. So we didn't spend that money going forward. But no, that would be something we're having to look at in next year's budget to begin with.
Because they're under warranty for this year, but it would be something we'd have to include next year.
Right.
Okay, and then are there any IT or software costs for the cloud service?
That depends on what plan we select. That's actually a really good question. Depending on how much evidence you can buy, just 10 gigabytes of evidence storage. The plan we're going to present to you again is the extra most bestest plan that includes unlimited storage for everything, and then it goes down from there during the plans. So we can cut this back way basic to just, we don't have to get brand new tasers, the upgraded ones if we want to. We can just do body cameras and a basic pay-as-you-go evidence plan. And I think that goes down to like 16,000 a year for 5 years for just body cameras to upgrade them. So it just really depends on how far we want to go with technology-wise. There is some exciting technology that comes with the brand new cameras. One of the things for the new cameras, the Axon cameras that the watch guards don't have that I know of, if my officer's out in the field and for some reason they forget to activate their taser or they can't because they're ambushed or something, there's a basically kind of like a magnet device that's attached to the gun holster and also the taser. If my officer draws their gun for some reason, it automatically activates their body camera. Depending on which level you go, that if I'm sitting at my desk and they're down at Beachfront Park, that pops up on my screen with a live video footage and I'm watching what my officers are doing. So unfortunately, the way it was progressed to me is, and it also is if there's a gunshot within, I think 15 feet or something of the officer, that will automatically turn on the officer's body camera. So say, unfortunately, one of our officers is ambushed, shot, their body camera automatically activates. It has a prior recording of video for 30 seconds. I get that. As I'm making calls to get officers down there and everything, I can now broadcast video. I can broadcast a video footage of it, get everything out. We're looking for the suspect while still getting the officer help. So in either way, the new cameras also, if we have that incident where the officers have to get out real quick and act, it happens. You don't remember all the time to hit that camera. If somebody draws their taser, it activates the body cameras within 30 feet, I think, all of the Axon cameras, our department or other departments. Same thing, you can tie it in with your code 3 system. If the officers turn flip their lights on code 3, or they hit a certain speed, that could also activate it. So in that's helping out our officers, because in those times, I mean, I've been in numerous situations where I got to get out of the car real quick and deal with it, safety-wise, life-wise. But also on the other end of it, if our officers are doing something they shouldn't be doing and they're going too fast down the city street, we can curtail that also, and there's video footage of it. So liability-wise, lawsuit-wise, all that. We've had lawsuits in the past, or current too, that traffic stops happen, there's no video footage. Okay, well, the days are past where we're just believing officers on their words. Unfortunately, it's a digital age by far. Everybody wants the video footage, and if it didn't happen on video, we don't know what happened. So, but yeah, so it depends on that tier plan of how far you want to go. So I think it's top cost, everything included, tasers and body cameras. It was at 41 after we take into account the $6,000 we're already spending. It would be.
I thought it was right around 40, but it's in that range for this discussion anyway.
And that includes all bells and whistles and everything, like the dream that I would love to have, and then scale it all the way back down to reality of what we can afford or not, with everything else.
Well, are there any one-time costs with this, or is this all on an annual basis for both tasers and cameras?
You can purchase it all one time if you want to. This just is in a 5-year payment plan. So the one-time cost, if you want to pay for this the whole time, I think the full program, if you go with all bells and whistles, was like $236 or just under $240.
Okay.
So you could pay that. And for that program, the rep I'm working with did include about $20,000 of discounts, and that includes turning in our current tasers. So that's the full thing. And if that was what you decided was and that would still include, I forgot, a technology upgrade. So what you're getting is not just one body camera. If for some reason We get the Axon 3s this year, Taser upgrades next year to Axon 4. We get that upgrade for free. Anytime they upgrade the cameras, you get it through there. Minimum, you're going to get new cameras every 2.5 years, I think it was. So over the 5-year lifespan of the contract, you're getting 3 cameras per officer, minimum.
Mentioned you thought we could probably keep the cameras for another couple of years after that. So basically, it'd be 5 years of payments. You might have no payments for a couple of years before it's time to upgrade because they're out of warranty again.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed the one-time cost.
The one-time cost, if we go with everything, the most bells and whistles, it was $236, I think. But then it can go down much more than that too. So.
But and Rich, when we looked at that though, this was the range you're seeing or saw was paying for it every 5 years. If you wanted to pay for it all now, you could, but there wasn't any savings, was there, Rich, that was associated with doing that?
No, that's just the cost. But you'd still get the 5-year program. It's just if you decide, hey, we have this money now and pay it. That way we don't worry about it for the next 4 years. That's what you're using.
But other than that, there really isn't any startup cost. That would be your traditional sort of one-time, out the gate sort of cost. It's just either pay for it over 5 or up and down.
Right. And that full programming. Oh, sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. I wanted to know what the previous camera and previous Taser budget was. So 3 years ago?
Currently, the Taser, it's $6,000 a year that we're paying for it. So it's $30,000, I think, for total, or just over that. So we paid a little extra the first year because we had to catch up. I think it was like $8,000 the first year, if I remember right.
But that's just for the Tasers.
Right. And then $1,400 per camera that we have, and we typically have 1 per officer.
So you have.
We've had to replace those over that's for 3 years per camera, $1,400.
So I would like to see a couple different options actually detailed out for all the new cameras versus the new Tasers, kind of like the dream package, and then maybe, the next step down, what you could live with. But personally, I mean, I feel like it's a no-brainer and is something the city should be doing. It's protecting the city on so many different levels as far as liability and lawsuits and just safety for the officers. And then, just the time spent, labor costs saved as well. But that's my opinion. Open up the floor to the rest of the committee.
Good to have options.
Mm-hmm.
But I was not fully prepared for all the options tonight. I have the one. I will have all the options. I'm working with the Taser rep for that. So, but I do have the full quotes. And I was going off a quote I got from a friend of mine that works for Anderson for the body cameras, and I got the price off that. But yes, I will have all those options. And yes.
Perfect.
Do we have any questions from the council?
Mayor, if I might, just an observation, not necessarily a question, but one of the things that we have been able to do over the last 2 years is receive RMAP money from our insurer risk management accreditation program to the tune of our max. You can get up to 10% of your contribution. The last 2 years, we've got $50,000 back each of the last 2 years because of implementing specific things just like this that is reducing our risk level. While I know we're talking about Measure S money and so forth, but it's all general fund money. But the reality is even if we weren't using RMAP money to offset this cost, implementing a program like this is going to validate our application year after year, because there's probably nothing that gets more scrutiny than law enforcement, especially in the world we're living in right now. And so I just, for the committee, I just, the city has already implemented this. This is just, Kelly refers to it as a no-brainer. I agree. It's a lot of money, but the reality is doing things like this actually have returns on them. There's an actual monetary return from doing this very type of thing. So I think good options, and knowing, I don't know other than just what Chief has shared, and we've talked about this. I don't know about other programs or other companies or anything else. But I just wanted to offer that observation that there's a real savings that's associated with making these kinds of investments. So thank you.
Thank you.
We've
we have
also
more-
talked about being proactive versus reactive, and there are definitely savings in that. So
Absolutely. I have one more question for the chief. As far as utility is concerned, say in a life-threatening situation, how will changing to these new cameras affect the officer response? Does that make sense? Say in the training or in implementation. Say right now, the officer has to turn on the camera, correct? And then respond?
Well, our response
Respond and then turn on camera.
You should be turning it on anytime you have interaction with the public that could lead to reports. Basically, anytime you don't turn it on, it's really at a deficit to you, because you should be recording all your contacts with anybody. The response, the training for it, the buttons are pretty much in the same place. The axons are actually easier to turn on, easier to manage. There's not much that. What I will say personally, I've been in life events. I almost lost my life on duty, and I much rather would have the axon camera when it comes to that time than the watch guard. And I'll say that any day of the week, and I'll back it up with true life experience, being involved in with life events with sheriff's office or here with both systems. So Ms. Kime talked about the research. I've lived it, I breathed it. I've used several different systems. So like I said, I was the first one to use in this county when I was working drug interdiction. So, and I would, no doubt in my mind, I would rather have an axon camera when that time comes. And and I've been there through many of them. So.
Thank you. I guess what I was trying, the point I was trying to get across is that as far as our officers' safety, it makes sense to have that, to not have to press the button or turn on the camera when you pull your weapon in a bad situation.
So we would definitely train it, and muscle memory comes into effect and everything, but there's always that certain situation. I mean, given today's world, officer assassinations are up, officer ambushes are up, unfortunately. It's a crazy time to be in law enforcement for sure. And any given time, something like that could happen. You're walking out your patrol vehicle in the back lot and somebody's there. So yeah, and in that situation, there's always something to happen. And for it to still be able to activate and go, if you have to pull your gun or your taser, and it helps them for sure, and us as a city.
Thank you.
All right, so that'll certainly be a discussion. We'll bring back some of the options, and that's kind of the whole thought behind a meeting like this. Get the information out, let's get questions back, let's get the information back to the committee, back to the council, and so you guys can make an educated decision once you have all the information. So excellent discussion. All right, so I was hoping to keep this meeting to 2 hours. And we're just about at the 2 hour mark. So, but there's one other big topic still to cover, and that's the facilities piece of it. Is everyone good with continuing on and taking on this mountain? Okay.
Mr. Weir?
Yes, sir.
We didn't cover the taser portion of that. I can keep that very short and simple if you want, or we can talk about it later.
Up to the committee and council.
Well, I think if we're looking at replacing both our cameras and our tasers, we need to know all of that, in my opinion.
So I do have a short video to play that'll show the main differences. I think it's key to watch. It's a lot of upgrades technology-wise in it. One of the big things that I really like is the rechargeable batteries that come with the new Taser 7, and that's also how you download it. Currently, If we have to download something, our taser instructor, Mr. Lowe, comes in on his date. So we have to down the taser. It gets booked into a locker, and then he comes in and downloads it, and then it can go back out. So we're down that taser. Now you can pop out the battery, put it in the charging system. It downloads, updates, does all that stuff all at once. So that's definitely a key. I will share my screen real quick and play this video, and I'll stop it a little bit to kind of explain things, but there's some key upgrades to the system itself. Are we seeing the Axon video now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in this, what you're seeing is typically on the tasers we currently have, you have 2 cartridges. Each cartridge shoots out 2 darts. So the first shot hit here and missed, so you wouldn't have a connection. The second one then hit here and here. Typically, then those 2 would just connect, and that's all you have, leaving this one inoperable. The current technology now automatically rotates through all the darts that connect and gets the best path for best connectivity, and it rotates through that. So it may turn out that this one and this one are not the best, and it's this one and this one, and it automatically changes that between the 4 darts. Also, what they show is that weight that's actually in the dart that comes out helps penetrate clothing. One of the problems you have with current taser darts is if somebody wears a loose sweatshirt. We're here in Del Norte, we sell a lot of good clothing. A lot of people wear sweatshirts. It's hard to get that, and it's easy to deflect taser darts too in those situations. So that extra weight coming through is key. Also, what you're going to see here in just a second is how the spooling happens. Currently, if you see all this, it's not fishing line, but it's the line that comes out is all included in the dart cartridge, I guess you can say, and it spools out as needed as compared to what the old one used to do, and you'll see that. So as you can see, for accuracy, these ones are kind of flimsy, flopping around. These ones are more on target, going direct, and you can see how the line comes out because the line is included in here for these ones. The current ones we have, the line is back here at the cartridge and comes out as needed. These are aphid markers that can tell if you deploy your taser, it's kind of like an evidence or a serial number for the taser, so you can tell who deployed it where on the scene. That's what that is. Including this also the GPS locations of what's going on and rapid footage. Again, like I said, if this is all included where if we have an incident and I'm in the command center, I can have all my officers up on screen at the same time watching what they're seeing real-time footage. That's going to help in that critical incident for us. So that was it as far as that.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Weir, you're muted.
All right, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's not any other questions on tasers or body cams, we'll bring back some more options on those. Chief, I think it was a good video though. That was very informative. We'll bring back options on those. So facilities, you have sort of those 2 options: existing police station improvements, and you have a new police station. So kind of, is there something we can do short term while we are looking for the long term? In 2019, the city completed a PD site analysis and building space needs assessment. It kind of went over the existing issues with the police department: no covered vehicle storage, no emergency operations center, inadequate interview rooms, evidence storage processing was inadequate workspace for staff, no training facilities, inadequate meeting rooms, no secure parking. They missed a big one here with the locker rooms, inadequate locker room space, especially given the fact that we're not dealing with all male officers anymore like they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. There's a lot of female officers, and it certainly makes up a large percentage of our organization. Yet we don't have the facilities to really meet the needs of that changing workforce. So that's kind of what the facility assessment said. What Chief Griffin has done and Chief Menzel started was working on some of these things. So inadequate evidence storage and processing. If you go to the PD, when you go to the PD, you will see they've worked hard on this. And this is maybe not ideal, but it is. I wouldn't classify it as inadequate anymore. They've created an interview room, and so they're doing the best they can, given what Ernie mentioned earlier, that this was a converted law office. And so there's several improvements have been made. That being said, there's still a ways to go. The other issue that was brought up, especially in this study, is that we are in a tsunami zone. So this is a map from the ASCE, and it shows the 2,500-year inundation zone. And so you can kind of see, and I don't know if we'll be able to zoom in a little bit. I guess I can. The Peterson Park sits here. Our police station sits right here, basically. So just sort of in this inundation zone for the 2,500-year event, as it's stated here in the building code. This is different than some of the other maps that you've seen, different than the tsunami evacuation maps that were just approved. Those evacuation maps are 1,000-year maps. For essential services, they want them to be at the 2,500-year event. Even though, according to a lot of the tsunami experts, they don't think that the Cascadia subduction zone is even capable of producing something like this. Nonetheless, this is still the extrapolation of that inundation zone. Key facilities are like jail facilities, hospitals, so on and so forth. Mr. Olson, who's in attendance as well, and you can ask him questions on this, did recently attend an ASCE training. And there he is right there. Mr. Olson, you want to give us a brief synopsis on your ASCE training?
One of the main things that came down to the classification of the facility was the holding cells. If you have holding cells in your facilities, which we don't currently, and I don't know that we would plan to in the future, you're not required, or you can make a policy judgment and say, we're not going to classify this facility as a class 3 or 4 and keep it just as a regular facility, treat it more like you would residential facilities and keep it in that class 2 range. So it's certainly an option where it's not set in stone that we absolutely have to build only in those unflooded areas that you're seeing here. But it is a policy decision. So.
But it does give us a little bit more flexibility than what we originally thought. The building space need assessment said basically for full build out, you would need to have an 11,000 square foot building. We currently have a 4,000 square foot building. So there's definitely a need and a benefit to building a new building somewhere else, or doing a major expansion to the police department. They looked at 4 basic options, build a second story on the existing site, $4 to $5 million, look at a new site outside the tsunami run-up zone, 1 story with adjacent parking. So a little bit smaller lot was needed there, 3.5 to 4. New site, 2 story with adjacent parking. So you're going, a little smaller lot, going 2 stories, adds a little larger cost. And then a 1-story building with parking below was the largest cost. Again, this was either 2018 or 2019 costs, so they've gone up significantly since that time. They do not include soft costs either, so that's things like design and construction management, contingency, those types of costs. So taking these rough numbers here, you're probably looking somewhere in the 7 million, kind of from what we're seeing. I mean, construction costs are really starting to go up now, 7 million to maybe 10 million. Something in that range for a new facility. And looking at the Measure S money, obviously that's kind of out of our price range, but there are options for the city and trying to utilize CDBG funding, different things like that that could play a role. So this is still the sort of the master plan idea, trying to figure out a way to try to get to this at some point in time. But that some point in time is not going to be in the near future, and we do have some near future needs. So how do we try to address those? So short term, site improvements, building addition. They're kind of what we're looking at. And I'm gonna try to bring up my other screen here real quick again. Let's see if this works. Okay. So this is the police department here. Here's G Street, here's 7th. Peterson Park is over here. So this is the existing facility, the existing paved parking lot. If you sort of look at it here, we have our little storage shed, and that is basically a single wide trailer that the city picked up some time ago to try to meet some of the storage needs. It works, but it's certainly at the end of its life, to say the least about that. Then we have this empty lot, which is just a grass lot. And I think somebody was mentioning this early on in the meeting, as far as, you know, can something be done here to facilitate the improvements here at the PD? So this is kind of what we're dealing with. If you look at some of the options, and I'll cut right to the chase with it, site improvements are needed. You can see the parking lot doesn't really facilitate the cars that we have now, much less acquiring additional cars. It's really tight. This creates damage. This creates a egress situation that's hard to get out, especially in emergency type situations. So we're looking at expanding this site improvement, basically paving, graveling, paving, and putting in some lighting along here, putting in new fencing along the south side. This lot has now been fenced, and so we do have it a lot more secure than what it was in the past with an electric gate and whatnot. So we could take that on. If we look at the sidewalk improvements, there aren't any sidewalks here. That we don't have access ramps that meet current ADA code, so those should be upgraded as well. It's about $160,000 for that. And again, these are planning level estimates, but at least gives kind of an order of magnitude of where we're at. Some other thoughts to really help the facility is to build some covered parking here. So this will just be coming right off the existing building an additional flat roof structure. You have some posts here, but creating a whole covered area here. This would facilitate what Chief was talking about in regard to some of the bike storage itself, at least getting out of the weather, and also some covered parking. So if officers are coming in, they have reports, it's pouring down rain, they don't have to walk across the street in the pouring down rain with a report in hand. Okay, so that's that piece. Then you have the locker room addition and interior building improvements. So interior building improvements does include some flooring and some of the cosmetics things that you saw in the pictures that needs to be done, some improvements to the lobby, different things like that. But it also takes an area of the building and looks at a remodel of that building so that if you added a new addition, it can be much smaller and still facilitate your needs. So it'll be turning this area into sort of that locker room area where you would have separate changing facilities, break rooms, different things like that, utilizing some space that we already have just in a remodeled condition. So that's those are your main components when it comes to the police department itself. Looking at kind of a little bit more in-depth breakdown. Let's see, where did that go? Brought it up in a different window. There we go. So site improvements, like I said, paving, striping, site lighting, security cameras, fencing, covered parking for the ATV. So Chief Griffin was successful in obtaining a new side-by-side ATV for response to like beach incidents or in the park itself. Currently, right now, we don't have adequate parking for that with a covered area. And so we would have a small covered area that would be included in that parking lot piece of it. And then the ADA improvements we talked about. Building improvements, flooring, roof, lobby improvements, and locker room remodel on the existing buildings, about 210. And then that small little addition, we're talking 20 by 30, 600 square feet, 325,000. This is what just about made me hit the floor when I saw some of these costs, but that's what we're dealing with. If you look back at the PD study itself, it was saying about $325 to $375 a square foot. This assumes about $350 a square foot. We did get a bid from a local contractor, and it's right in that ballpark. So these are real numbers, at least from a planning level. So that's kind of the facility side of things. Questions, comments, concerns? I know Councilmember Smith, you took a tour. Mr. Perry?
The city already owns the vacant lot?
That's correct. It's one parcel, actually.
Okay, good.
Why is the square footage cost so high?
You know,
Is it because you're adding on to a current structure?
Yes and no. And a lot of times adding on to a current structure can actually be a little bit cheaper because you can share common walls, different things like that. Remodels themselves are expensive, but it's just right now lumber is through the roof. Materials are through the roof. Contractors are busy. Home prices are up there, and so yeah, prevailing wage, they're going to get those premium wages, and so that's what we're looking at: 350, 375 per square foot. Just unbelievable.
Do we have any contractors on staff?
City specializes in maintenance, and so we do have carpenters, on, but this isn't their specialty. The other thing you run into with a project like this is we can, as city staff, only do up to a certain dollar amount, and then you have public contract code that basically kicks in, or the bidding laws that say we have to bid it out to the contractor. And our threshold is 60,000 on that.
I remember that. Any other questions? Looks like the council member has a question.
You're good. Bill, you're good.
Right?
No.
Okay.
She asked the question I was going to ask. You guys already probably knew I was going to ask that, though. Do we have a contractor on staff, and why is the square footage so much?
Yeah, crazy.
It'd be nice, but
yeah, and so hopefully these budget numbers get us in there, so as we plan, we can put it out, and then when we put it out to bid, best case scenario is it would come under budget, and we can do more, or we could shift funds to other areas. But at least we think this should get us in the ballpark to be able to do basically what we want to be able to accomplish. But it is a high dollar amount, much higher than even I thought when I asked Director Olson and his team to evaluate some of these things. And Rich was talking about different needs and whatnot.
So how long would that hold us over, you think? I mean, with the addition, the parking I seen, so you could enter from the current gate and exit from the Peterson Park side, I would take it, right?
So so there's a gate here that you see. We would build a driveway in here as well. There's a gate on here, and so it would be designed to come in this way and go out this way.
And this is really just a conceptualized plan. What we'd want to do is work closely with architect and engineering team, and really design this site so that it's maximizing efficiency, getting the most parking that we need out of it, and then accommodating some of these things. So this conceptual plan, that's all it is. We don't have those specific areas detailed out or anything.
Is this also taking into consideration our usage of that shed and what we would do with what's in the shed?
It's another good question that we talked about earlier this week. Chief, do you want to maybe answer maybe even both those questions? The question from Councilmember Smith in regard to, if we built this, will this meet the needs of the department in the near term, because realistically, you know, and the shortest you would ever, I mean, if everything just went perfect, right, you're still probably looking at 6-7 years until you would be in a new police department. And it's more like 10, 15, something like that until it all comes together. So, you know, Chief, you want to weigh in on both those questions?
I'm working on the reality that if I'm hopeful we get a new PD in my career in the next 15 years, maybe 20, that would be amazing. What I want to make, I guess, make sure people understand is our department's very proud of what we're doing, where we're doing it, and where we do it out of. Basically, anything you do to this department is going to increase, you know, morale, everything. But we make do with what we have a lot. Those little upgrades would be awesome, let alone doing it all. But if you're talking about how far we'd still be able to make do with it, if you're able to do those improvements, I'd very happily work for the next 15, 20 years here in this building. So that's not an issue. We'll make do with it by far, and we're producing great results. So the shed that's out back currently, about 70% of it is filled up with old paperwork ranging from 1983 to I think that was about 2005-ish. They're just cases of old, I mean, literally boxes of old casework that I need to go through and make sure are not current pending cases. And then we're in destruction for that per our records retention policy. So that's, as soon as I can get a lot of time and get, you know, time to destroy that could go away. There's also, we are utilizing that currently for a drying room per se. If you get wet evidence, blood evidence, stuff like that, you have to dry it out before you book it in. Bad things happen to that if you don't in the evidence room, and you lose evidentiary value also. So a couple things are in play as far as that. I would move that to where currently our generator is for the police department, which is attached to the current building, right next to where the bicycles are. So, and because I'm working on a side project, we're going to tell the city council about soon, I believe, if it comes to fruition, on the side for a new generator, standby generator, that's also drastically needed for the police department. That would be, as far as the covered parking, would cover that generator and also our current heat pump outside too, which would increase the lifespan of all that. So that building, I mean, the plan is to, the shed, there's going to need some repairs on that. It needs a new roof. Currently the floor is sinking based on the weight that's inside of it. The door even shifted when I put some stuff in there. So I had to redo the hinges on the door myself to be able to get it to lock secure. So that's an old classroom that was brought over here, shed. It does serve a purpose. We do need some, I don't think we need that big of a outside storage for bulky items. There's some evidence bikes that are in there, and it does help on search warrants where a lot of property is taken to be able to store it in there temporarily secure. So if we're looking like an outside shed, one of the ideas I had initially was to put a larger shed at the west end of the property, a garage per se to place the ATV in that's sheltered, and then right next to it, a storage room basically with a pull-up garage door on it. So something like that. But I believe, in talking with my evidence clerk, we're also purging a lot of evidence that's been in here for a long time. So we're going to be able to do a lot more with the space we already have. And all of our storage probably could be dealt with for a long time based on what we already have. So.
But yeah, that shed does need to have some work or go soon.
It could still have a useful lifespan for a while, but it's going to need some work for sure.
Do you have an anticipated cost on that possibly?
The shed piece itself?
Yeah.
Well,
it sounds like it's in pretty bad shape.
It is in bad shape, and so it all depends on kind of this, this discussion and what we decide to do here. Can we limp it along for another year or so? Do we want to buy something else? How fast is this project going to move? Mr. Olson, do you have costs on that?
No, I just wanted to say, you're still looking at that $350 a square foot if you're looking for a complete structure that is of a robust type nature. Some of the options we looked at was, let's go to Home Depot and grab a couple of those cheapo depot sheds, and park them over there. That's the other end of the spectrum. You can park them there with no heating, no electricity, no anything, and just store your junk in it. And that might get you by for, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years on the long end. But that's kind of your bargain feral bottom basement price. And then the actually let's building something that meets current standards and would be effective and actually add some value to the property if we were to ever sell it and or move into a different facility of some sort.
The
What
other,
about one of those, like, I know it's not a pole barn, but one of those prefabricated, kind of just.
That really comes down to like that needs assessment. So we know there are some basic needs there, and we're providing kind of this range of costs tonight. I think it would be really important for us to work with a qualified architect and engineer for this specific site development, and then go through that needs assessment process, similar to the PD study, but obviously scaled down to meet this size of this project. If it's a $200,000 project or a $500,000 project, something like that, and really get that dialed in so that we can maximize the value and get exactly what we need for the planning horizon that we have in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions from the council or from the oversight board?
all right.
Mayor, I just one, and I would be interested to see whether or not Mr. Olson, as you look at all of this, or any of you, have you explored the idea of modular buildings like the schools have done? Obviously, you can't attach that to this existing building, but there's a reason why we have so many modulars all over the county around schools, because of the cost associated with adding on and building, as opposed to something that is made in mass, so given the fact that we have as much land that we do, while it may not be ideal to have some of this separated from the existing building, it seems like to me that it might be a more cost-effective way of obtaining square footage that's really usable for our department.
We did not look at modular buildings. I don't think that even the previous PD plan looked at that. Certainly when working with a A&E team, we would certainly put that in as an option.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I just throw this out there? I mean, that was a good idea, Councilmember Inscore, but here we are giving our town a facelift with the park and doing everything we can to beautify our community, and we want to go throw modulars in a lot. I mean, come on. I mean, we're trying to look good, right? I don't know.
I agree. I agree with you, Councilmember Smith. I guess my concern is that we don't end up not being able to do anything for the functionality of our officers. Yeah, I want everything I want the $7 million brand new building, but I'm not gonna. I won't be around 15 years from now to do that. If we could for $500,000. And I get it, it's not ideal, but for $500,000, if we had modular buildings that really increased the efficiencies and provided the kind of new type facilities, new locker rooms, showers for men and women, and provided really for them to go out and do the work that they do, that's the only way I'm thinking about it. I agree with you that.
No, I get you, and I appreciate it.
I want to provide for our officers. And I'd like to see it get done, and that's hard. All of this is hard because it's all got a price associated with it.
I was just thinking along the lines of here we are trying to beautify our city, and
a good point.
How long are these modules really going to last?
It would all just be temporary fix, just a Band-Aid. What about increasing the add-on from 600 to that full length?
Sure, we can certainly do that. It's just going to be, every square foot's another $350 or so. And so just, it comes down to money and being able to,
I was just thinking about, maybe putting a couple $1 million into the expansion, but actually creating a space that would be usable long-term.
Yeah.
Well, my thought was a little more modest than that. And that was, what would be the debt service or financing for, say, 750,000 for the 10 years?
Yeah, and we can certainly, look at that. We are going to be hiring a municipal financial advisor. And so a lot of these questions, and especially as we get into some of the other areas, like streets and some of those other high dollar sort of discussions, I think we can certainly bring that back. I think those are good. I think those are good discussions.
The financial advisor is going to be for the city or for Measure S?
It'd be for the city. The city's going to hire the financial advisor. We're looking at an energy efficiency project that could be up to $7 million as well. And so their job is basically going to look at our debt capacity and what can we take debt on, what are those interest rates should be looking at, and then those different components that we could use that debt service on. Which police department could be one. Unfunded liability of the PERS is another big cost for the city that could free up some general fund dollars. Other street improvements. So it kind of goes hand in hand with Measure S and just city in general. But no, I think it's a good point, Ernie, on that side of things too. Measure S money will come in every year. So a debt service on something like that, you could have a much smaller dollar amount, achieve the needs that you're looking for now, and be able to pay it over time.
I really think it's going to take, if the goal is to build a new facility, it's going to take the full 10 years to do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would anticipate that as well, unfortunately.
Just piggybacking on that, we will never see a better time to leverage debt service than we have right now.
Agreed.
I mean, we're never going to see interest rates at this level. There's going to be this window that we have. And I think that with the one of the things that I hope that the committee helps us really evaluate is what portion of Measure S are we willing to leverage as debt service for long-term infrastructure projects? The PD building is certainly a good example of that. Another good example of that we'll talk about on the 9th. That's Front Street. I mean, now that the question that I get, I just really thought we'd get Front Street done and everybody would pat me on the back and say, wow, what a great job. You said that we would do this when you ran for office. I haven't had a single person say that. You know what they all say? When are you going to do the other half? Yeah. So I think that with you guys' help, we need to be able to evaluate how we can leverage this revenue that comes in every year into some debt service that gets some of these big projects done that we've dreamed about, that we won't get done any other way. And this is the ideal time, in my opinion. And I'm not a financial advisor. I've never seen money availability like this in my lifetime. And I don't know how long this will last. So I appreciate the thought, Ernie. And it's one that I hope you guys can help us really evaluate as citizens of whether or not those are good decisions, along with our financial advisor, of course.
But just keep in mind that no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there.
So I'm just curious, if we were going to designate a certain amount of money, we don't know exactly. I mean, the estimate is that 1.3 million is going to come in, but we really don't know. So would it not be better to perhaps choose a percentage of what comes in can be these large projects?
Yep.
Or then you can,
Yeah.
enjoy the benefits of all of it, I suppose.
Well, that's a decision that the city council will be faced with eventually. So,
right.
Because, if you borrow the money, you're obligated to pay it back. But on the other hand, Mr. Inscore is correct. This is excellent time to be borrowing money.
I feel more comfortable borrowing money for something like a police department versus a street.
I would tend to agree with that.
I agree with you on that one too.
Yeah.
And Mr. Inscore is right. It is the right time to borrow money.
Okay. Good
All
discussion.
So, this is exactly what we were talking about, what to do. Lots of needs, limited resources, evaluate, strategize, prioritize, right? Just what we were doing. Looking at some of the things that we've talked about on this one. So just to kind of put it in perspective for the group. And again, a lot of this will end up coming back. We have the Measure S, say it was 325. Again, that's that sort of just the quarter to each of those key areas. We have the reduction of overtime. We end up with about 410 in annual revenues, sort of ongoing from Measure S. Again, this doesn't include a debt service or any of those types of components. And then you have the annual expenses that we talked about. And this is maybe a little further out if they were all implemented. So you have your 3 officers in place, your detective, your canine, your promotion of your lieutenant. You have $55,000 a year going to vehicle replacement, and you have your body cameras and tasers. I think it's calculated at 40,000. So in the long run, as you start to get all these things implemented, your revenues do meet your expense needs. However, this doesn't really address any of those one-time funds that we were talking about. So what are our one-time funding sources? Well, you could stagger recruitment. So like we talked about with the hiring, just in that first year, you gain 131,000. There are some available Measure S funds in this first quarter that we talked about as well. There's about 300,000 or so, as Linda talked about. Of that, the pool is reopening. We talked about possibly, associating the 175,000 with that pool reopening. So that would leave 125 in this scenario. But again, it's all sort of general fund money, so it's kind of a wash when it comes to that. But nonetheless, 125 is in this analysis. We have our current reduction in overtime that the chief's been able to achieve. That annual surplus is 20,000. That's simply the difference between this 390 and this 410. Then you have your canine grant, so about 358 or so. You look at our expenses we're talking about, you have your canine of 18,000. We want to purchase 2 new vehicles right off the bat. That's 100,000. And then we want to do all these site improvements that we talked about, which adds up to 810,000 for just the site improvements. Or if you want to try to find a way, you can try to find 7.5 or 10 million, but I don't know how you do the math on that one yet. Looking at the other piece of it, if you look at this 810 plus this, say 120, that's about 800 or 930,000 is what you would need to implement this. You have your sources here. You could delay one of the officers by 90,000. Again, these are just sort of ideas as I was trying to brainstorm and just throw some things out. So that would save you 90,000. You could evaluate the other Measure S funding measures as well. Pull from one of those other pieces for the one-time costs, and then look at general fund, and you could get to something like that. Debt service is another way to eliminate some of these other sort of bigger pieces. So you wouldn't necessarily need a debt service of this 958. You could use this saving stream here for your first year, and then take a debt service of the, say, 600,000. So there are ways, right? There are solutions to it. We just need to be creative and kind of think outside the box a little bit and see what we can get there. But it's also going to take recommendations from the committee and the council themselves. This is also just the police department. We're going to have almost an identical discussion when it comes to streets. And there's going to be this piece down here where there's this piece that we can't fund of streets that we want to fund as well. Pool's going to be out there. Pool have additional funding, which is great on the pool, and then you have the fire department side of things, which that has some moving parts to it still. The fire department takes 2 to tango, and right now we're the only ones that have their funding measure passed. The district still needs to pass theirs to implement the master plan to its fullest. So we can talk about what we want to do there, but the city itself can't really fund those positions that are needed. So that'll be a discussion that could lead to some one-time costs that we can discuss on how best to use them.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Since you were talking about the fire department portion, I know it's not agendized, but when we go to talk about fire, can you make sure that you add a portion about the possibility of them not getting their portion passed? What are we going to do if they can't?
Yeah.
I understand. I don't want to even entertain that right now, but we're going to have to think about it.
That's, yeah, absolutely. And then
If
we're
the people
discussing.
don't want it, you know?
Can you clarify what you're talking about when you say their portion?
The Crescent Fire Protection District's assessment is
So when you look, we go back to
what
the,
we're talking about.
So their benefit assessment is sunsetting, Mrs. Schlon.
Okay.
and there's two parts, right? We're talking about additional resources for Crescent City Fire and Rescue, which has two parent agencies. That master plan identified an additional $662,000 of cost to implement that. When you look at the cost share between the two, the city as portion is about 307. The district's portion would be this 355, plus, like Bo said, their other assessments sunsetting. So they need to come up with about $465,000 on the district side of things.
And are they looking at implementing some of the Measure R funds for the fire department?
I don't believe they can they?
That was not part of that measure.
It wasn't? Okay.
Yeah, that is general sort of county funding. So that's, but
the district is still a special district, so their funding's coming from that benefit assessment, correct, Eric?
They get a certain amount of taxes as well as their benefit assessment. And there's two benefit assessments that they have currently. One goes on and the other one sunsets. So they're losing about a third or so of their total benefit assessment that's going to sunset, I believe, in 2022, I think. Is that right, Linda? Does that ring true next year?
Yeah.
So, is that right, Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I remember them passing that one.
And they're on a trajectory that, if they don't get something passed from the numbers that I have seen, it's not even about really implementing the master plan. It's about survival to a certain extent, even with just, current level of service.
Right.
I don't know. We don't want to go down that road, Mayor Greeno. Eric remembers what it was like before the city and the district were working together, as I do. And we couldn't do it without each other. But the district we were penny pinchers over there, and it had to be like that.
I agree with you, Councilmember Smith. I don't want to go down that road, but I think that we at least need to look at what it looks like, the hard numbers, if they're unable.
So I know that I was hoping to keep this meeting at 2 hours. We're now over 2 hours and 40 minutes or so. I know some of you probably have to go, so let me just share my screen real quick. We'll do a parting sort of shot. We can get back down to the final slide. Covered a lot of territory, a lot of slides, right on through them apparently there. All right, maybe I won't share my screen. So basically, next steps on this is just what we're talking about now. You guys gave us some good feedback on things you want to see come back to you. I anticipate, the meeting on the 9th will hit streets. A couple weeks after that, we'll hit pool, we'll hit fire department. The one sort of nuance is some of the timing. If we really do want to see an officer position start, and I really don't have all the information now, but if that's the start date is July 1 that we're looking for an officer, we would need to start that recruitment and get the position control and whatnot allocated really soon. Before the end of March, I think is kind of the dates that we were talking about, and Sonny could speak to it. But that would be that one piece. And I know that's kind of a tough ask. So if that July date, my video just froze. Hopefully, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you want to hit that July date, we'll need to take some sort of direction from the committee, and then we'll take it back for official action to the council. If you're okay with it sliding by a couple of months as far as the start date, then we can bring the rest of the information.
Are we still getting, I still say we, is the city still accessing grant money for any of the positions?
Linda, do you want to answer that?
I can or the chief can, whichever. We are currently using grant funding for some limited hours on specific projects, but it's not funding like an entire position at this point.
So the grant funding covers our school resource officers, shared costs through the school. And then we weren't able to fully utilize the tobacco grant that we were awarded based on the hiring and how some communication issues from when I got chief as compared to the last administration. But we are utilizing that for some saving costs on salary currently. We not renegotiated, but we're had a group meeting with the grant people on that, and it's allowed us to do different activities from that besides hire an extra school resource officer. So we're able to offset our salary costs on that. If I can add one thing about the canine, as far as timing, we have been working with our training group. He's been watching out for good dogs, in his opinion, definitely the expert. They do currently have, in his opinion, his own words, a very good canine, if that's what we're looking for, available that he's kind of holding just in case something was. That $12,000 for that canine grant that was available or was given to us initially by the Tamaki Foundation, that was initially for a canine kennel out back. I don't personally see the need for that out there, that it would be used. I think it would not get used, and it would probably go to waste out there. If our canine officers had a long case, their dogs would go home in their own kennels that they're used to, or be right next to them typing in the building. So that's where I would like to utilize that $12,000 to go towards a new dog. That would pay for a new dog and the cost of the school. The school's $4,000, new dog's $8,000. And then so.
Is the Tamaki Foundation okay with a change of plan on the dollars?
We don't know, because we've tried reaching out multiple times, and they do turn over lawyers every now and then, frequently. We've not had any communication. I've sent letters, emails. Sergeant Lopez has sent it, so there's been no communication. My assumption is that if it was supposed to go for a kennel, I'm pretty sure that they'd be okay with it going towards a dog. That's my assumption. So what I would like to do with that, if we receive direction going forward, is to be able to get that dog somewhere near now. There is an academy starting, but it's too soon, too quick. Get that dog, let the person have time with that dog, start some training here now, everything. And then by the time they're ready for the next academy in a few months or whatever, then they could go. But that's kind of my plan. So just wanted to make sure that was out there.
Okay.
I have a question. I should have asked it earlier. Sorry, Mayor. This is kind of a two-parter, Eric. I don't know who could answer it. What was the city fire department? How was the retrofit paid for? And is the city police station safe? Is it earthquake safe? Is it? I mean, is it? If something were to happen, is it a safe building?
Good question. So the fire department piece of it, the fire department was primarily a grant, 2 grants. So it was a hazard mitigation grant through FEMA, paid for a majority of it, I think 700,000, something in that range. And then we also went in partnership with Elk Valley Rancheria through the ICDBG and received approximately 800,000 through them, of which the city's contribution was 200,000, if I remember correctly on that. And that ICDBG piece of it bought a fire engine for about 400,000, and then also paid for $400,000 of improvements to the building. Now, total contributions from the city on that was about 600,000, if I remember correctly. So you ended up with somewhere right around, I want to say 1.4 million of grants, somewhere in there, and 600,000 of city funds. It's pretty close anyway, off the top of my head. So does that answer your question on the fire hall side of it?
It does. Where the money came from, it does. But now the police station's building, is it safe to withstand an earthquake? I mean, I know something big, probably nothing safe, but you know.
Mr. can chime in as well. You know, single story wood frame, something like that. John, do you want to go ahead and chime in?
Yeah, this will just be more of a general opinion because I don't have any specific knowledge and have done no structural investigation. So that's the caveat. Generally, wood frame construction is incredibly resilient. and can withstand pretty significant seismic loads. And so when I walk through the building or look at the building as a whole without doing specific investigations, I'm not afraid that we're going to have some significant loss of life if we were to have a fairly significant earthquake. The fire department had, taller clear stories, distance between the floor and the roof in those engine bays, a lot of wide open spaces. So great distances between walls. This is more like your typical residential construction. And, there's a lot of tight spacing on walls. So as things begin to rack, you're generally more robust of a system. We've also added some additional walls recently, and the walls that we added, we added plywood for security reasons. That also helps with, our lateral shear values and racking of the building. So in general, I don't feel unsafe. So I probably said too much. But
Thank you.
Okay. So with this, Eric, are you looking for direction on some things right now, or is this all informational for us?
Primarily informational, but again, there are these couple components that if the committee feels comfortable, wants to make the recommendation, we would take something back to council, because a lot of it's going to take some sort of a budget adjustment. And so timing wise on this, if you wanted to see an officer start in July, if you're ready to make that decision, we would need some sort of direction now so we can start the recruitment in time. Rich also has a lead on that canine that he was talking about as well. So if you're ready to pull the trigger on that, those costs added together, I think from the sheets that you saw, including the $12,000 grant, you're probably somewhere around $110,000, $120,000 is what you'd be committing if you were to make that. Again, it's a tough spot to be in because you don't have the whole picture of the streets and the rest of it coming down, but that is a specific sort of ask for the police department in which you would fall within their allotments.
Well, I know I have opinions on what I would want done, but does the council have anything, or does the oversight board have anything before I speak?
Well, I guess it's just to clarify, you're looking for direction from the oversight committee to take back to the council for approval? Okay. So I'll just start that brief conversation. It's hard for me to commit over $100,000 of the city's money when we don't have any money yet. It being responsible and financially, prudent. Do I support hiring an officer for July? Yes. Do I support getting a canine? Absolutely. I almost feel like the body cameras are more important than an officer right now. I feel like the liability and the safety is just super important to me. So that's just kind of where I feel right now. So I'd like to hear from the rest of the oversight committee.
Well, I'll speak up. I agree with Kelly on most of what she said. I think that if you want to act on this out of order, in quotes, I think the best you could do would be to put it on the agenda for the March 9th discussion, because I don't think we have enough information to make a solid decision or recommendation, pardon me, because it'd be a recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
I will agree. I'm not ready to spend or recommend spending money before you have a better idea of all the funds that are going to be requested, and get a little bit closer to that day when we start actually collecting the funds. So March 9th seems like a much better time to start specifically giving direction. And with that, I'm sorry, but I have to go.
Okay. Well,
I
thank
would
you.
ask if possible that you do basically a schedule for us, meaning that if you want to have an officer hit the ground on July 1st, what's the schedule, working it backwards, because, your recruitment's going to take time, interviews take time, relocating it takes time. I understand your anxiousness, but I'd like to see what it actually lays out, how it lays out.
And Sonny can speak to it as well with a big time frame on the officers, the background piece of it too.
Background check. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if it would take about a month probably for good recruitment. We've had really good success at recruiting some great officers. There is kind of a lot of officers looking to leave higher populated areas and wanting to come up to areas that are just less in population. So that's a draw for them. Don't feel like we would have a hard time recruiting an officer. The interviews we would be scheduling through Zoom if Chief Griffin wanted to have them come back. But the backgrounds, depending on where they live, if they were local, that could happen relatively quickly. If they lived out of the area, that is something that could take a couple of months. That's why I was hoping to look at like a March 15th date to start recruiting. Have recruitment in the middle of April, do interviews at the end of April, and then a background would be like May and June with a tentative start date beginning of July. So that's my schedule. And how usually the normal of the time period it takes. So I hope that helps a little bit.
And just for some perspective too, if we shifted that even just a month, the committee could probably have the majority of the information as far as the rest of the components. So March 9th, you'll get streets. If you waited a couple more weeks, you'd have pool and fire, some of your other recommendations, but it would mean probably a start date of August or September possibly.
Okay. Do we have?
Cindy, do you have anything to add? Or any questions? No? Mr. Matz, is he still on?
Yes.
I'm still here.
Did you want to add anything?
I'm just, thinking that we shouldn't be counting our ducks before they come out of the egg, because we need to see how much money is actually going to be generated. Estimates are all good and dandy, but until you have a bird in the hand, you don't know what you're eating that night.
Thank you.
Right.
Sounds good, then, I guess.
So I'm cautiously optimistic, but yeah, I agree with you all. We definitely need to be cautious going forward, because as you said, we don't know how much we're going to get. So it makes sense. The tasers, I think, and the body cams, as Ms. Schlong said, I think our Chairman Schlong
Kelly is good.
I think they are very important. I mean, officer safety should be paramount in everything that we do when it comes to our police departments. So I would like to see that come before us sooner rather than later.
So can I ask a process question, Eric?
Yeah.
Right now, you're asking us to make recommendations to the council with money that we don't have. So how is that tracked? I mean, if you were to go ahead and if the city council was to go ahead and approve some of these expenditures, how is that tracked in relationship to if we didn't say, yes, we recommend that you hire an officer right now, but the city council chose to anyway? Is that used with your general fund money, or is that put on the Measure S budget, or what's that process?
The council has the ultimate authority over the general fund, which includes Measure S money. So if the council says they want to go ahead and do this, they can do that, and then it's going to be accounted for separately, and then the Measure S committee would review that and say, yes, the money was spent on what the council said it was to be spent for. That's kind of that oversight piece. But there's this component of the recommendation piece as well. So that's where it's a recommendation. Council can follow it or not.
Right. So I was just thinking, like, one of the things you said that we were tasked with at the end is to report to the public about how the money was spent. And so would that report look something like, we did not recommend that this position be funded for July, but the council chose to, but it was Measure S funds were used for that purpose? Or I'm just trying to think about it long-term, what that looks like when the public comes to us.
Yeah, and Martha can kind of weigh in on it a little bit, but I think the true power of that report was the money spent where the council said it should be spent on? That's really kind of what that report is. Martha, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think there could be there's no hard and set rules for what the report looks like exactly. And it may depend on the committee at the time and how exactly they want to put it forward. I think, yes, the most important piece of the report is this is what was received, this is where it was spent, and these were sort of what the city told the people money was going to be spent on. That doesn't mean that if the committee felt like it needed to insert something about, hey, we really recommended against doing A or B, and the city council chose to do that. And, there's nothing saying you can't put something like in there if it was a criticism that the committee felt strongly about.
I'm not looking at it as a criticism. I was just looking at it as, how is that tracked?
Right. So necessarily is there a mechanism for every recommendation or non-recommendation to be tracked? I don't think we have anything set up for that.
I don't think I'm communicating my question very well. I think for me, it was more about the financial end of it.
One of the things that, Kelly, because I think it's a good question, and I think I understand what you're saying. And the reality is if we were having this discussion a year from now, as we evaluated what we have done, then you would be making recommendations based on the decisions that we made. And then what we did with those recommendations would be revealed in that following year. And that's really where, but what we're doing is trying to bring all of you to the table up front before we've done anything, so that you understand the magnitude of what we're doing, because this is huge and we're in unprecedented territory. And I do think that there is going to need to be an understanding that if you're going to have citizens oversight, which we do and we value, then it, just like the grand jury report, if you don't respond to those recommendations, then there's two risks. Number one, some of us might not get reelected or get thrown out of office. Or secondly, the citizens may come back and say, we're not going to pay this tax anymore because we've got our representatives who are trying to provide guidance, and you're not listening to them. So I think where that really is going to come into play is after we see the money actually come in and what gets spent. And it's tough. I mean, you guys don't have an easy task because you're trying to get up to speed on stuff that is of a magnitude that it's hard for us who have been living this to try to balance.
And I agree. At least I have a little bit of a background. I think where I was actually going with, now that I'm like saying it out loud, is that, if you move forward with funding the officers and we don't have any money in the pool yet, right? The pot. And then the money doesn't come in as quickly as we had hoped, or as quickly as the financial advisors had projected, kind of like, then where does that put us in having oversight over the money?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the reality is you're going to get March 9th and you're going to see streets, and then you're going to see the pool, and you're going to see the fire department. And what you're going to come to the conclusion is you're going to come to the same conclusion that I have is, yes, I want all of it.
Sure.
And you're going to see the price tag, and it's going to be quite a bit.
So,
that's all I can say. It's a lot.
But
So
from
we're
a
gonna have to
budget
pick and
side,
choose.
go ahead. Ryan.
So expanding a little bit on what Kelly's talking about, I would hope that this process would at least provide both the city council and the committee with quarterly reports of how much money came in and where it was spent. I sure as a heck hope we don't wind up at the end of the 12 months trying to figure out where every dime went, and somebody's banging on the door asking us where every dime went.
Yeah.
So will we be getting quarterly reports, I would hope?
Linda, how do you envision the Measure S piece to come back as far as the reports? I know you give council reports, every month, basically. Do you envision this being part of it?
Okay.
So it's kind of up to the committee. I mean, as Eric and I we are non-voting members of the committee with you. Our role is not to make decisions, but just to be here as a resource to you. So we will be tracking through our accounting software every dollar that is spent that is designated with Measure S funds, and also the money coming in. So, I mean, I can provide that information to you on whatever frequency you like. It would be pretty straightforward.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And then, kind of the process right now is most of these expenditures will start July 1st. And so part of our budget process, just like, any sort of estimated revenue, whether it be TOT or sales tax, we don't know exactly what those are going to be. But sales tax, this will just be added on to the sales tax. So we do have a pretty good measure of, historical sales tax. We also hire a company. They give us predictions on the sales tax. So there's a pretty good thought process as to what we will see. And then we'll budget those revenues, just like what we do normal sales tax. And then we'll have corresponding expenditures that don't exceed those revenues.
So if the council were to go ahead and I'm just going to pick something and fund the canine and the cameras, would then that liability be delayed to July 1?
Well, not right. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
Just from an accounting perspective, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky with the timing of it. So technically, the city is earning that Measure S revenue beginning on April 1st. But we're not going to know exactly what it is until we get the check, which won't be for a couple of months after that. So there's always a little bit of a delay, which Eric was talking about in our budget process. We have to be able to spend money. We need our estimates of revenue to be pretty reliable. What we do to try to, mitigate that risk is we do have an agreement with a company called Hinderleiter. They're experts in sales tax, and they actually provide us quarterly updates. They track every single receipt that's coming in for the city from the state, and every quarter they give us an updated projection. Like that, we'll start out the year with 1.3 million as our estimate. Then every quarter they will update and refine that estimate. So if things are going off track, we will know before the end of the year and can make adjustments if we need to.
So yeah, so if they wanted to spend that, say the canine money, that would be an adjustment in this year's budget. And I think as part of mid-year, Linda, is that where you included the 300,000 for this first quarter of Measure S?
Yes.
So that revenue will be in this quarter. That expense would come out of this quarter in this year. And then we'll see where it goes. If it doesn't come in, I mean, we would then have to supplement it with general fund money.
Right.
Which is Measure S money. Right.
Not yet. In April, some of it will be.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for our residents that believe in the city by passing this measure. I'm thankful for this committee. We've got a lot of a lot of big decisions ahead, and I hope that, you know, between the 5 of us, we can be helpful. And I would just ask before we end the meeting that we offer public comment.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, yeah, let's open up public comment for those who are in attendance.
I don't see any hands raised on the Zoom side of things.
Okay, it looks like we don't have any emails either. Thank you guys for all of your hard work today. I know it's been kind of a grueling meeting, and I think that these are really important meetings because we're getting, you know, all caught up together. We're seeing all the same figures. We're seeing the picture of what things look like now and where we want them to go. And I think it's going to be important going forward to have your guys' recommendations. And I really appreciate you guys taking this time to be here with us. Mr. Perry.
2 observations. One is next time I'll eat dinner before the meeting.
Me too.
The second one is just for your benefits. I did the training, the warm and fuzzy training that says you will take it for 2 hours. Unfortunately, because I've done it so many times in my previous career, I did it in under 2 hours. So I got to do another training for another half hour to get me over the 2 hours.
Yeah.
So take your time. Make sure you take 2 hours.
And they're done that. I had to take 2 extra ones.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Well, it's been an interesting evening.
Yep. I really appreciate all of you guys. And I appreciate the fact that it's not 11 o'clock.
Right.
Just saying.
Really great information from Chief Griffin. I really appreciate it. You seem to be completely on top of every single facet that you presented to us tonight. And I really appreciate that.
If I can make a comment real quick, if that's all right. I just really appreciate your guys' faith in us. It's not very prevalent in society today to have city council, let alone a group of citizens that want to volunteer to do this and have the, I guess, the faith in the police department that you do. So we will continue on our end, specifically in mine, and making sure our product gets out there that supports that and continually moving forward. And we're going to do that whether or not we get all these other doodads and everything. But this is that step forward, that the police department's looking for sure. And it's part of the community. It's not just for us. So I greatly appreciate it. And I just want to make that clear.
It shows.
Thank you, Chief. And I hope that you'll give the troops our best. They continue to work day in and day out for our sakes and to keep us safe. So
it may not show, but there are several of them watching tonight. There was one of them, 2 of them logged in, but there was a lot more. So that's message received, and I'll make sure they get it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, do we have anything else from either committee, from the council or from the committee, just to round this out?
Good night.
All right. We will adjourn this meeting to, well, it says March 1st.
I'll make a really quick, very proud mom announcement.
Okay.
My son is coming home from the Army. I haven't seen him in 15 months, and he'll be here March 11th.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys enjoy
Army
your
moms.
That's excellent.
Thank you for letting me say that.
Problem. So we'll adjourn at this time to March
All right.
1st meeting at 6 o'clock.
Good night.